regular meeting of City Council with Committee of the Whole to order for Monday, November 21st, 2022. Our first is delegations. 2.1, a presentation to former councillor Paul Javetkov. So, you know, Paul has given a lot of time to City Council. I don't know how many years, but how many, Paul? 17 years. So, yeah, we just wanted to recognize your contribution, Paul, to the city and and putting your name out there and for everything you do. As well, I wanted to recognize you. I just noticed in the paper that you were also received the Earl Johnson Memorial Award just recently. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that as well. And I know you do a lot in the community and will continue to. So thank you. So if you can come up, and then I did bring the picture of that too because I wanted to just point out that you're not smiling in the picture. So if we're getting a picture, I'm only doing it if you're smiling. So yeah. So if you wanted to come up, Paul. It's heavy. Congratulations. Thank you.
Oh, right on.
If you wanted that. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Put it at my desk so I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Smiling. Take one. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words, but if you wanted to, you can.
We got 15
Well,
minutes for you.
I read through the budget the other day.
Okay, well maybe not.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. 2.2, we also have a presentation to a former councillor, Shaylee Wilbur, who also has given a lot of time and commitment to the city. So we wanted to thank you. I think you're 11 years you did. So yeah, just wanted to call you up and thank you for everything you've done for the city, Shaylee, and everything you've given to council. I know you did a lot here and were a lot of committees and gave a lot. So we just wanted to thank you as well. So. This isn't as heavy, so it doesn't, yeah, there's not as many rocks in yours, so.
Oh.
Perfect. Thank
And you know, I just want to mention, and so to all the new council too, you can't do this without family, so I want to shout out to my family.
Yeah, you got it.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next we have 2.3. We have Dale Bumstead. Sorry, no gifts for you, Dale. South Peace Health Service Society in attendance. Reason the Baltrees House update and locum accommodation lease at 1608 106th Avenue. Request for reconsideration on the utility costs. So welcome, Dale.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Councillor Sudnick.
Oh, Councillor Sudnick.
I just need to declare a conflict as a voting member of the Health Services Society, so I'll step out on this one.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sudnick. We'll come grab you when we're done.
What's that? Good morning, Your Worship and Council. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come this morning and speak on the South Peace Health Services Society. I really wanted to give a couple of things. I wanted to give an update on the current state of the Health Society and the project, the Baltrees House, as well as a number of other initiatives that the South Peace Health Services Society has been operating under over the last year since we had the extraordinary meeting to elect the new board. So we've been in operation, the new board's been in operation for about a year now, and really the focus that the board took at that time was to the two projects that were underway at the time were the Baltrees House and the attached carriage house that was attached to the property. So we went to work and got some of the structure stuff of the society looked after. First of all, the director's officer's liability insurance, got the financial statements, bookkeeping all up to date and completed. which put us then in good standing with the Peace River Regional District in order to apply for the funding that we were getting from the Peace River Regional District on an annual basis. So the board then also went to work and applied for a grant through Northern Development Initiative Trust. It was a community housing grant that was put forward by and through NDIT by the Coastal GasLink project. So communities impacted by coastal were then eligible to apply for grants for social housing, and this project fit within there, and so we applied for a grant. And as a result of that, we were able to then get the funding in place necessary to complete the Bolter Ice House project and the carriage house. First project was the carriage house. We got it completed. And once completed and furnished, then we were able to negotiate a lease with Northern Health. That two-bedroom unit is being utilized for agency nurses who come into the community to work. And then that provides us, the society, with some funding to pay for the operating costs of utilities, et cetera. We then went to work on getting the Bolter Ice House itself completed, and that project has now just been completed the end of October. Construction is completed, and we're in the process of getting it furnished. We have negotiated an agreement with the Ministry of Health, and they're going to help with the operating costs of the facility. And so we're in the process of in discussions with the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living to take on that as a contract to operate the facility for us. It will be a 6 to 7 bedroom facility for patients coming into Dawson Creek for acute care services, maternity, general surgery, oncology, any of those acute care services that require a patient to come into either Dawson Creek or Fort St. John and need a place to stay. And this patient accommodation house removes a bit of that financial stress and pressure that a patient may be facing at the same time as dealing with the health stress of as the services required at the hospital. And so the ministry see the benefit of it. It's a regional facility. It doesn't benefit anybody in Dawson Creek or the immediate surrounding area who have a place to stay because they're in their own home. But somebody coming from Fort Nelson, potentially a high-risk pregnancy, might have to leave home 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the delivery of the baby, and now having to find a place to stay and accommodation and food and all that additional stress of cost of living and financial stress. So the ministry saw the benefit of it and are going to assist with the operating costs, which is a huge relief to us as a society because it removes that burden of fundraising in order to operate it. And so we hopefully will have it furnished within the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're just in the final stages of negotiating the agreement. And the funding will come from the Ministry of Health. It will flow through to Northern Health, who will distribute it to us. And then we'll arrange an agreement with a service provider for the management of the facility 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, housekeeping, laundry, everything to do with operating and managing the facility. The other thing we did about a year ago, probably not a little less than that, was we have locums come into Dawson Creek on a regular basis, and locums being either a family physician locum or a specialty locum. And so 2 things they require when they come into our community is transportation and accommodation. And so we had some discussions with Aaron at Browns and Wayne at Bannister, and they've graciously donated 2 vehicles for the use of locums when they come into the community. And I'll give you an example of how kind of important that is, in my view, is we have a specialist comes into Dawson Creek 1 week a month, an anesthesiologist. She comes in from Vancouver. She's here every month for a week. So there's 2 things, right? She needs accommodation and she needs a vehicle when she's here. And so this has enhanced her desire and her willingness to come to Dawson Creek because it eases that burden of costs as well as knowing she's got a vehicle while she's here. So really, we really appreciate the support from Wayne and Aaron on that. We get a ton of agency nurses come into the community as well, and they're here on a regular basis, backfilling for those vacancies that occur as every community faces. And so one of the initiatives the board are going to take on now is we're going to purchase a couple of vehicles for those agency nurses. I think, honestly, when they come into town, some of them haven't made a decision. They're just out of school. They get paid a bunch more dough to work as an agency nurse, and they work all over Canada. If they come from Nova Scotia, Manitoba, wherever, and they could be into our community for 2 weeks or a month, and they get paid extra for being that traveling nurse away from home. But same thing, they don't have transportation when they're here. Accommodation is looked after for them through Northern Health. But I think if we can find a way to provide transportation for them where they get a chance to get out and experience our community, get to the pool, get to the ski hill, get to the gym, get to experience our community, hopefully that will raise the reputation of our community in a way that they say, maybe there's a place that I could come and start my career as a nurse. And so we're going to buy a couple of vehicles, and we've done the fundraising in order to do that, and we'll work with the dealerships locally, the 4 of them, in order to find some support from them who have the expertise, and that'll be another initiative we're going to take on. We started with Northern Health now some staff appreciation nights, and we started with the nurses. We've done 2 of them over the last 2 weeks, and it's simply a thank you. It's simply a thank you to the healthcare professionals that are working in our community for the appreciation of the work that they're doing and the tough job they have in every day of providing that critical healthcare services in our community. So in partnership with the Dawson Creek Hospital Foundation, the city, and the Peace River Regional District, we put on 2 of these, and we've got a couple more that we're going to do before Christmas for the other staff in the hospital and in the community. The Locum House is another really important initiative to me that the city had taken that facility on at 1608 106th Avenue earlier this year. And to me, it gives us the opportunity to provide that locum accommodation for that anesthesiologist when they're coming into town. And so council's direction was that we would take on, the society would take on a lease for the facility, and we would pay all the utilities, any excess insurance, some of the maintenance costs, and then we would apply for a grant for the taxes. And the board have met and we're completely understand that position that council have. But for every dollar that we fundraise for and we're taking on, and put into the utilities and those operating costs of that facility, it takes away from those initiatives, those other initiatives that we can do on behalf of the city and the Southeast region for healthcare services. And so my request today is for council to look at that and see if there's any possibility to reconsider. We take on the role of fundraising, and that's what we do as a society, trying to raise the money to pay for these initiatives that we're taking on to help support the recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals. And I think everybody sees it across Canada today, how important healthcare is to our community. The last nugget we're working on, and I'm working with John Curriota from the board member from Northern Health, is international trained healthcare professionals. And we started earlier this year where we stumbled upon the awareness of how many internationally trained healthcare professionals there are in Dawson Creek today as a result of the college or as a result of other initiatives that they've taken on to immigrate to Canada and are now residents in our community. We facilitated a meeting in April or May and invited every healthcare professional that is in Dawson Creek today at the college or working otherwise to attend a meeting because we wanted to get a sense of who are they, how many are there, what categories of professional are there. 29 RNs in our community today that are not working as RNs. They're students working at Rotary Manor as a care aide. They're working at Canadian Tire. There was 5 pharmacists. There was 2 physiotherapists. There was 2 lab techs, a dentist, an orthodontist, and a physician. And all of those people are in our community today, healthcare professionals who are not working as in the healthcare industry. And to me, I think it's a huge opportunity, creates a huge gap, creates an opportunity to fill that huge gap that exists in terms of finding a way to facilitate and help these people become successful in healthcare services. So that's, honestly, I just wanted to really kind of give a high level of what the society is working on, what we're doing, and how we're trying to build a model of working collaboratively together in our community for the benefit of the community on healthcare services. And we appreciate council's consideration of the Locum House in terms of us providing one more opportunity at accommodation for locums in our community. And so thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dale, and thank you for the update. Is there any questions from council? Councilor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship, and hello, Citizen Bumstead. Good to see you. So just a couple questions. I guess I'll start off thanking the South Peace Health Services Society for their work. I know I've been aware of them on the periphery, and whenever asked to help, I've been happy to do it. I think it's an important issue. Obviously, with the 106th Avenue location, it's slightly different than Boltry's house. The city purchased that for a completely different reason, and then, realized we might be able to find some added value in providing it to for this purpose to the South Peace Health Services Society. My question, I guess, revolves around, you've mentioned you've got a lease on the Boltry's house with the Ministry of Health or Northern Health. Is there any interest from them on a similar arrangement here? Simply because, you are aware more than most probably about the uploading issue, right? As we upload these costs, as minimal as it might seem, onto ourselves, the odds that we're going to get rid of that or that the provincial government is going to step in and take it back a year or two from now is pretty slim. And, I think of myself as a taxpayer, right? The province, 1 out of every $2 they spend is on healthcare. And this is rightly within their purview. I mean, we as a community have tried to step in and fill some of those gaps, recognizing that if we don't, the community might go without. But my first preference is to allow the province to foot these bills, because that's what people have already paid taxes for. So if you could speak to that, and if there's any chance for Northern Health or the ministry to take on this responsibility.
Yeah, the locums are come in and provide that support in behind your family physician. So when the physician goes on vacation, they got to bring in a locum to look after their practice if possible. And so that's all on the costs of the physicians. It's not a funded place for the Ministry of Health that they fund accommodation or costs for locums, only in really extreme or emergent situations. So it isn't one that they fund, and where the patient accommodation house is one that's a unique model that, like the Ronald McDonald House, is one that's for the patients. And the agency nurses are one that they bring the agency nurses into the community to backfill those vacancies that exist. So they pay for those costs for the agency nurses, but it isn't one that they'll fund the locums. And so that's, I guess, our concern is we go out and raise that funds through donations and different models. It's if we pay for the $4,000 or $5,000 a year for the utilities and those costs, then it just takes away from those other initiatives that we can do to help that support that recruitment and retention really at the grassroots level. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, I understand if it's coming out of your guys' pocket, it is one or the other, right? Yeah. My concern or a frustration, I guess, is the reason, as Northern Health is responsible for staffing these positions, the need for locums is what it is, in part because their staffing efforts, it's everywhere, but haven't been as successful as we'd like them to be, I guess, in some ways.
It's a problem that exists all across the country in terms of everywhere you look, you see diversions and lack of capacity at hospitals, not in just rural and remote areas anymore. It's Toronto and Calgary and major communities facing this issue of a lack of staffing, right?
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow?
Thanks, Dale. Good overview. There's another aspect, given that you're here and for the benefit of new councillors and to refresh my memory, in addition to, by the way, the Dawson, I'm the Secretary-Treasurer for the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living, and I think, we are certainly very positively inclined to do the work you outlined. Especially given the secure funding that you talked about. But there's another dimension as well that I just want to raise, okay? So I'm not talking about locums or the contract nurses, et cetera, and the outpatient provisions, you've just outlined. But I recall that I don't know if council discussed it, but we were aware that securing qualified specialists for our local hospital seemed to be that the bit of a competition between communities. I'm not going to mention the discipline, but I'm going to mention the community. It was Smithers. and that if we wanted to stand a chance of securing this specialist in our community, the impression I got, we had to beat the offer being provided by the community of Smithers. A number of things like housing. I know the doctor in mine wanted a house that was to cater to a large dog, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to me, it just is that we're into a bit of competition with other communities for what we can do to encourage professional health practitioners to our community. And I wondered if you had any further insights on that dynamic that we're facing.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Parslow, I think that's one of the issues that everybody's facing is the availability of specialties and specialists. And then it's so competitive out there, and the opportunity for them to go and practice just about anywhere exists today. And so why the Bolter Ice House, that patient accommodation house, is so important to me in terms of why I think it's a benefit to us is, you know, it's like the business, the patients will drive the demand for services. And so if patients, the maternity patients coming to Dawson Creek because they have an affordable place to live and stay while they're in awaiting those services, now it increases the need for OBGYN and anesthesiologists because the specialty services are driven then by the demand of patients and not the health provider and Northern Health moving those services to a centralized location and people traveling to them. It kind of reverses that where patients now are demanding where they want the services because of the affordability of the costs of those services for them outside of that. So I think that with the new hospital and with this model, hopefully then that will enhance the view and the reputation our community has with specialists who are saying, you know what, maybe there is a place that I can go and practice medicine because one, I got the volume of patients and I got the support mechanism around to be able to provide that support to the patients while they're in for those acute care. It's just a competitive world out there, and I think to me, it's us at the community level, at the grassroots level, doing whatever we can proactively enhancing the recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals. And you know that the attaboy nights, the thank you nights to the nurses and the healthcare staff is one of those. Just appreciating that staff and raise that reputation of our community. There's a lady that was at our event last week, and she's a psychiatric nurse. She moved here from Vancouver Island a year ago with her 2 daughters. She came here because of the cost of living, and I think the housing prices, affordability of housing still in Dawson Creek is another competitive advantage. So I think it's all that stuff, Councillor Parslow, that I think we just continue to work on, trying to build that awareness of how important healthcare is to our community and do the things we can to help support that.
Thank you, Councillor Parslow. Councillor Apollonio.
I'm ex-Mayor Dale.
Good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate all the hard work. I know I'm new to council, and I know that you're working hard on this program or this society. So I thank you because I know you're contacting person just to start this up. I'm just only talking to a friend that I think you need help. I just want to learn what's the update about the nurses or the health professional that, for example, the meeting that we had last one with the Northern Health. So at least we know where we are standing about the staffing or maybe about the development, how they will soon to be like applying their profession back in their country, for example. So at least they could somehow staff the needs for our community. So any update about that?
Thank you. So when we originally started this, John Curriota on the board of Northern Health has raised it up through to the board, and we've got it to the Ministry of Health. They've hired an individual in Fort St. John who's an ex-Northern Health employee to work with the international students, healthcare professionals, to be able to help guide them through that barrage of information that they need to have to understand. And I know that they're reimbursing the funding for them when they apply for and have to apply for exams or English proficiency and all that stuff. And the other thing we've done is we're working with the college. And so we've got Northern Lights College with all of the colleges in the University of Northern British Columbia, because there's an education component and then there's that on-the-job component. And so we're pushing hard on it because we realize what an absolute benefit it is if we could find a way to help support them to become fully accredited healthcare professionals in our community. So we're going to continue to work on this. We believe this is a real opportunity. So,
Thank you, Councillor Apollonio. Thank you, Dale, for your time. I just wanted to say, a thank you to the South Peace Health Society for what they do. I get, we're in tough times in a lot of different areas right now, and healthcare is a big one Canada-wide. And I know a lot of northern rural cities are doing a lot of things to try and enhance bringing people here. So we appreciate what you're doing for the community and, at the grassroots, like you said, and making that difference and, and working with the city. So, just wanted to thank you for that and your time, and we'll bring this back under
Thank you.
mayor's business and get
Thank
back
you,
to
Your Worship.
You bet.
Council,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next on our list, 2.4, we have Doug Scott, Ty Lardner, and Jason Gauda. Citizens take action in attendance, reason the urban and rural crime within Dawson Creek. So, do we have another chair? Oh, and Councilor Sutter. Yeah. You're good there? Okay. Just when you guys are taking turns speaking, just up to the mic and maybe just say your name first so those that are watching at home know who's speaking. So welcome and thank you guys for coming in. So
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Mayor and Council. Thanks for having our delegation today. My name is Doug Scott. I've been in Dawson Creek for my whole life, 53 years now. This is my beloved community, and we're quite concerned how things have evolved the last few years. It seems like there's quite an uptick in crime, and that's why we're here today. It seems the status quo is just no longer working, and so hopefully with help of council and RCMP, we can come to some solutions for the problem. One of the ways we've handled this is we've wrote this letter to the RCMP asking for some solutions and asking for for them to respond to us. We're not real happy with some of the things that have some specific instances that have came about. So I wrote this letter, we wrote this letter, and I'd like to read it to you today. So we have formulated this letter as a group of concerned citizens in Dawson Creek working to prevent theft, potential crimes, and recover stolen property. Our group is made up of females and male residents, local business owners, community volunteers, property owners, and coaches of our kids' local sports teams. We are mothers and fathers in Dawson Creek concerned for our families and the well-being of the community. As you may know, the theft in Dawson Creek has escalated exponentially. People used to hear of a vehicle going missing once or twice per month. It is now a rate of 1 or 2 per night. This doesn't include the number of personal belongings such as tools, ATVs, vehicles, and even our kids' scooters and toys. We are writing this letter as a group of residents on behalf of the community who have lost confidence in the local RCMP's detachment's ability to address acute crime in the area. To start, we formally request further information on a few documented instances our group has been involved in. On November 8th, 2022, at approximately 4 p.m., residents were involved in recovering a stolen vehicle. One of the citizens in the group identified a stolen vehicle on the highway coming into Dawson Creek and notified others in the group. The group responded by following the stolen truck to the Petropass card lock, where 2 men left the stolen truck and were picked up by a second truck. The group then followed the second truck and blocked it in on the dangerous goods route after it had pulled over. The truck's driver rammed a group's member vehicle to try to get away. The truck was then able to drive through the ditch, got back on the road, and it headed to Dawson Creek. The group proceeded to follow the truck into town and ended up at Network Ministries, which used to be the old O'Brien School. Police responded after approximately 30 minutes from the time they were called, which was before anyone had ever left the Petropass, and proceeded to arrest a citizen from our group for mischief over $5,000 and possession of a weapon for dangerous purpose. The officers proceeded to search his vehicle without a warrant. He was told, "We can do whatever we like," although the search proved there was no weapons in the vehicle. To our knowledge, RCMP arrested 1 person who was driving the truck, let 1 go, and the other 2 fled the scene. In addition, our group member was required to turn in his possession-only license. It was apparent the responding officers were far more interested in arresting citizens trying to prevent further crime than arresting and investigating the people that committed the crime. This sadly seems to be a recurring theme during these situations. November 5th, 2022, at approximately 1 a.m., local citizens noticed a Chevy truck pulling a trailer with a skid steer on the deck. The breakaway chains and hitch were sparking. It was followed for about 10 minutes heading north out of town. When the driver realized they could not get away, they stopped and pulled the pin on the hitch receiver and dumped the trailer and fled. Local citizens on patrol stayed, called the RCMP. An officer arrived and informed the citizens to go home or they would be arrested. Once again, the officer seemed far more interested in scolding the citizens for helping and threatening them with arrest than pursuing the thieves. We would like to know under what grounds and what criminal code the officer had to threaten the citizens of our group with arrest. In addition, on November 5th, 2022, at approximately midnight, local citizens followed a well-known criminal drug dealer to a residence at Mile Zero Trailer Park. A firearm was discharged 3 times in the direction of the citizen group. RCMP were called again. They arrived casually and had no sense of urgency to de-escalate the situation. There has been no attempt by RCMP to reach out to the people who were shot at or to collect witness statements. Discharging a firearm, as we know, within city limits is a very serious offense, and we want to know why the lack of response from RCMP to investigate the person responsible. November 3rd, 2022, at approximately 9 p.m., local citizens gathered at a well-known drug house to protest. The resident of this address came out and immediately started threatening people. He waved a construction level at the group and threw an electric drill battery in their direction. He uttered threats of shooting and killing the group. The resident spoke specifically to one member and said, "I know where you live and I'm going to shoot you." 3 RCMP members were there when this was said. The neighbor was also a witness to this and told the RCMP that the disgruntled resident does indeed have firearms. In addition, the same neighbor has phoned the RCMP on several occasions about the discharge of firearms at the residence. Again, no arrests were made. The RCMP have not contacted anyone present for statements to help bolster this investigation. This is only a few examples of an ever-growing list of encounters and theft occurring within Dawson Creek and area. These appalling situations are now the talk of the town. When we frequent our local coffee shops, our kids' sporting events, local concerts, or restaurants, it's all we hear anyone talking about anymore. People are scared. They are scared for their kids and they are scared for themselves. The community of Dawson Creek and surrounding area is at a total loss. People are starting to become hopeless. The current community feels there is little, if any, deterrent for these thieves, as they are not being arrested or charged for their crimes. Residents are having to remove trailer tires, disable their vehicles, board up windows, and accept the fact that regardless of their efforts, it's just a matter of time until they have their belongings taken from them. If you haven't been directly affected by this uptick in crime, you most definitely know someone or have heard of someone who is. The feeling of the community is the RCMP lack empathy for residents and wish to shut down our group instead of working with us or to help us organize. Our group is not a bunch of thugs with nothing better to do than with our time. We are all volunteering our time out of necessity. We can't afford the replacement of insurance costs associated with theft. We want to work with the RCMP and assist with preventing crime in our beloved community. We have amassed a large amount of data from surveillance in a small period of time that could help the officers out, but not once have we been asked for any information or what we have witnessed. We have received nothing but stonewalled from the RCMP. We, the concerned citizens, have been on the RCMP website, which states your purpose is to prevent crime, enforce the law, and investigate offenses. We feel the Dawson Creek RCMP have failed miserably at upholding all 3 of these statements. It is most likely due to limited resources, and our officers need help. Our community is being let down. As a result, we feel we have no choice but to take upon ourselves and actively try to stop crime in our community. We ask that the RCMP report to me on these specific cases, provide file numbers and updates. We want to work alongside the RCMP and help. We are not criminals. We are concerned community members. We are citizens. Take action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug. I think we're at 10 minutes. I think there's still 5 minutes left. Did you guys, there was more you guys wanted to?
Yeah, we just have a couple more.
Okay,
things.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you guys for your time. My name is Ty Lardner. I've been in the community for over 20 years. I'm a small business owner, family man, you know, coach hockey, the whole shebang. And I do definitely care about this community, and that's our goal today, is to hopefully reach out to you guys and see if we can work towards a greater good. So that being said, our ask to City Council on behalf of our Citizens Take Action group. Would Mayor and Council consider writing on behalf of the citizens of Dawson Creek to our local MLA, Mike Bernier, and MLA Michael Farnworth, the Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety, regarding the Dawson Creek RCMP's lack of manpower and their inability to deal with our municipal crime problem in a sufficient manner? Would the city be willing to request a formal audit of the Dawson Creek detachment to ensure officers are following protocol and have all the tools necessary to properly perform their duties? And was our detachment fully staffed over the past 2 months? Would Mayor and Council be willing to host a community meeting of business owners to explain their situations personally and share their frustration in the lack of response and follow-through from our RCMP? Would the city be willing to reallocate budget money and resources to aid our detachment? For example, could we have our highway/traffic officers reallocated to help with municipal crime for the time being? And would the city consider reallocating budget money from our heavily funded fire department to aid in our suffering RCMP detachment? Local crime has escalated to critical levels. Dawson Creek and its residents feel like we are under attack. Will Mayor and Council take steps to consider using a municipal or provincial police force and remove the RCMP from Dawson Creek?
Thank you, Tyler.
A bit of a closing here. My name's Jason. Grown up in this community, been here pretty much my whole life. Know most of you personally. Terror, a state of intense or overwhelming fear. May I ask council and folks in the room, by a showing of hands, who has had something stolen from them or a break-in over the last year? Let that sink in a little bit. Also, if you haven't had something personally, do you know someone directly around you that's had something stolen? Could you put your hand up? It's a little bit shocking to see that after growing up in this community. We're living in fear here. I'm going to take you back a few years to 2009. I was working with LP at the time, and a small group of individuals took it upon themselves to bomb a natural gas producer, and it was called terrorism. And the RCMP dispatched 10 to 20 members from outside the community here. They had a site office, they had helicopters, they had K9 units. They did everything in their power to make that end quickly. It was an absolute show of force, and it did end quickly. No one ever went to jail, but it never happened again. They walked in, it was like the rules didn't exist. They were doing searches on farms, they were out in people's buildings, and they did what they needed to do to get it done. Fast forward to today, and the citizens are on edge, afraid to open doors, afraid to go to sleep for their possessions being stolen at night. Citizens are sleeping with bats and bear spray and guns at the ready I live just outside of town, and I know, talking to the neighbors, people are on the edge. And it's going to turn good people into bad people, because when they react to something like that, they're now the person that's probably going to end up in jail because they're going to do something that is illegal. But it's because it's not being addressed ahead of time. I'm going to take you back about 4 months ago now. My daughter came to me, and that's the reason I'm here today. My daughter came to me and said, "Dad, I don't feel safe walking to school anymore." And I said, "What do you mean?" I mean, I grew up here. I walked to hockey. I walked with your brother to hockey. We always walked around the community. She says, "Dad, I have to walk by sketchy people all the time." She said, "There's a crack shack on 8th Street I have to walk by." She said, "I have to walk by a safe injection site." She says, "Then I have to walk by someone that's got a bike full of stolen gear." She says, "I don't feel safe. I don't want to walk to school." And she dug her heels in. She has not walked to school one day since she came to me. I've had to arrange rides, myself, her grandparents. They arranged to take her to school now because she won't walk. The community's been so focused on compassion and understanding that we forgot about the average person here, the average taxpayer. This is not the community that we grew up in. This is not where we were 2 years ago. This is just escalating. We're under attack, and the community is being taken from us by thieves. We're being instructed not to stand up for ourselves. We're not being promoted to guard our own things. We're being instructed not to stand up for ourselves. The community needs to stand up and fight back. We need to get the thieves out of town. We need to stand up. We need everyone in this room to take ownership and come together to find a solution for this. It's not going to be a few people or a few groups. It's going to be the town that solves this problem. We need more support for the RCMP. We need more community support. We need to treat this like the bombings were treated back in 2009, where everyone comes together for a solution and immediate actions are taken. The criminals have learned that there's tolerance for their behavior. It's still escalating. If you get away with it once, you do it again. And if you get away with it again, you keep doing it. And that becomes your way of life. We as a community can no longer have tolerance for this. We need to take action. I want my kids to feel safe walking to school again, to be able to go and play in the park, to be able to leave their bike out on the porch without being taken at night. I can't personally afford to insure everything I own. Even my quads and stuff, it's like $10,000 a year just for insurance. It's not fair. So we asked the council and mayor, and we've asked the RCMP, we've met with the RCMP. We need to find a solution. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Jason. And Doug, that was a little bit over the 15 minutes, but that was all good. I just wanted to remind council when we open it up for questions that our policy allows 10 minutes for questions. So when we're asking questions, just keep that in mind. If there's other councilors that want to ask, so I'll open it up to council to ask any questions. Councilor Parslow.
Yeah, thank you for your presentations. Just a couple of questions. Why haven't you, as a group, aligned yourself with Citizens on Patrol? What is preventing that happening?
That is our next step here. So we have been in contact with some people that are working on potentially getting Crime Stoppers back up and running, and Citizens on Patrol Society, and we are definitely advocates for those.
Well, that's good to hear, because those organizations also will provide you with some protection, which I think you may well need. I'm thinking of insurance and liability issues, okay? Obviously, the mayor will outline what happens from now on after this presentation. It does disturb me, what you've said. Obviously, I think it disturbs everyone. if you've been following the announcements by the new Premier and following the news in Merit, I think one of the real impediments which you haven't directly addressed, and that's not a criticism because you're dealing with the RCMP here, but the law has basically prevented a lot of things, has really fettered the power of the RCMP and what they can do and can't do. And I think it would be good to get some understanding. The RCMP does not set the law, it applies the law. And the law needs to change. And I think there's some movement in that direction. But speaking personally, I think a lot of pressure needs to be put on addressing the issues, the causes of this, but also to protect citizens like yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parslow.
And that those are points well received here. We have spoken, we've met previously with the mayor and the detachment, and we do recognize where some of the challenges are, but some of the other challenges are when we're asked as the public to, when we see crime, call in, and the RCMP don't show up. And that's been a theme that's happened quite often. So it does pose a challenge because that is part of the job, and it's not happening.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No, sorry. Councillor Earl?
Just follow up on the asks. Can we make sure that our administration's provided with a copy of that? Because it was
Absolutely.
a substantive list. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Brenda, did you catch all the asks? Okay.
I have it wrote down, and I will provide you guys a copy of that.
It's recorded. Okay, but okay. If there's no more questions, I just want to thank you guys. And in the gallery, I know you guys are part of the group that's helping. I just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day to come in today and present to us. And I can speak on behalf of Mayor and Council that we understand that there's some concerns in our community, and I know myself, I've been going through a lot of lengths to try and to work with this. So I look forward to getting to the solution base of this, and I'm glad that you guys are willing to look at programs with the RCMP, and I think that's something with Sergeant Moffat that we could probably. I know she's on the same page. She wants to help get this going as well. So. So I think if that's everything, there's no more questions. That's it. So I just wanted to thank you for coming in and for your time. So thank you.
Thank you for
Okay,
having us.
thank you guys.
Brenda, should we have Ty email those before we get to later on in the agenda? I'm actually just going to call a recess right now. So 5 minutes. Business was 3 late items. Was there any late items? No, there's no late items. Okay. 4 new councillor business. Any new councillor business? Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll just mention it because I didn't see it under Mayor's updates. I'm sure you would have touched on it, though. I just wanted to thank the
I got it up.
Oilman's Association and the local Rotarians for their work on the Christmas tree light up over this past weekend. It was great to be able to do that once again. But thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just ask one thing?
Can you
I'm
push
not
it?
hearing you guys.
Oh, okay. You're not here.
Turn the volume be turned up?
Brenda? The speaker's not on? Okay.
Well, if you can just elevate your voice.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
I like that. It's somewhat assertive. It's good.
Okay. Thank you. We'll keep that in mind and speak up. No more new councillor business? 5 adoptions of minutes. 5.1, we have minutes from a regular meeting of council, October 17th for adoption. We have a motion to adopt that. Councillor Earl, second. Councillor Kempf. All in favor? Oh, we got to vote. I'll call the vote to order on the regular minutes. Vote is closed. That's carried. 5.2, so motion to adopt the minutes of the special meeting of council, October 21st, 2022 for adoption. Councillor Kemp, second. It has to be somebody that was here, right? Yeah. Councillor McDonald? You weren't here? Okay. Councillor Earl? I'll call that vote. Trying to remember in my head if you were here at that one, but I was like, no. Need one more vote? Vote is closed. It's carried. And then adoption of the minutes of the inaugural meeting of council, November 7th.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if it requires a motion, but I'd like to move that Councillor Kemp be put forward from our council to. You expressed interest? Okay. I wanted to make sure you hadn't changed your mind over the weekend. But that we give consent for Councillor Kemp to put her name forward and
To sit on the board?
the
Okay.
city on the NCLJ board.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McDonald? Any discussion?
So for those watching at home and around the world, NCLJ is an acronym for North Central Local Government Association. A number of municipalities from across our neck of the woods are members, and it is one of the ways by which we collaborate with other municipalities on common interests and lobby the government and other municipalities in pursuit of our agenda. It's something we try to attend or send representatives to every year, the meetings, and it does behoove our community and the region to have representation on their board. And we will be hosting the NCLGA conference here in Dawson Creek next year. So I think it would be fitting if we were able to successfully elect one of our own to represent us moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Any other discussion? Okay, just wanted to thank Councillor Kemp as well for putting her name forward to run on, to be appointed. So I will call this question to vote. Vote is closed and it's carried. That was quick. 7.2, we have email from Troy Clifford, Provincial President of the Ambulance Paramedics of BC. November 4th, 2022. Reason: invitation to address paramedic dispatch and ambulance resources in the community. Councillor Earl? Oh, just one sec. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that we direct staff to invite Mr. Clifford or someone from his association to address council as a delegation if he so chooses, or if there is another format he'd prefer. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Do I have a second? Councillor McDonald? Is there any discussion?
We just had a presentation on healthcare and the dire need all communities across northern BC and the province are facing with respect to this. And one aspect of that is, unfortunately, EMS is also a pinch point where people are having a hard time securing adequate services. So if there's a way we can collaborate with this organization and their representatives to move the ball down the field, I think it's all for the better.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No. I'd like to call this motion to vote. The vote is closed, and this motion's carried. I just got the arrow sign to start it again. Do you want me to hit that? Okay. Next, we have 7.3, letter from Michelle Mobley, Kiwanis Performing Arts Center, KPAC, Board Chair, on November 9th, 2022. Reason they would like to invite a member of Dawson Creek City Council to be a director on the KPAC board. I think one thing, if there is a motion or somebody's going to make one, is that we should appoint a liaison, not a board member. The problem with a board member on there is then they have to leave council. So, Councillor Earl?
Oh,
Or you-
but,
Okay. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, just to add to, would you want, I just want to comment, it's not been seconded yet, has it?
We don't even have a motion. No, I
I
was just
thought you
saying,
just
if,
made a motion. No?
no, I was saying if somebody's going to make a motion, just keep in mind that.
Oh, yeah, well, I thought, we would have a discussion about this in light of the in-service we had in earlier after we got elected. So
Would you like to
the
make a
discussion is, are we going to consider having a liaison to every service club in the community? If you're, it's just throwing out a thought.
Well, I guess from my point of view, is this is one group that sent a letter to us, not every group. So I think that would probably be a procedure that we would have to address at a different time. But Blair?
Through you, your worship, I believe this request comes as a result of the city. It's a city-owned building. We have a lease with this group. And so they were entertaining the thought of having a board member. I would concur that a board member may tie the hands of an elected official when it came time to vote, whether it be on capital or anything else operational for the building. So a liaison would be appropriate, and then it would preclude the need for a councillor to exclude themselves from the vote. But it's strictly a decision of yourselves whether you appoint or not. But I would differentiate from most community groups in the province, in the city, based on this as our building, our asset. They lease it from us, and we have a lease agreement with them.
Okay. Thank you, Blair. Councillor Earl?
So, thank you, your worship. I'll make the motion that we, in the spirit of this letter, appoint a liaison to attend board meetings, but is a non-voting in any capacity.
Okay.
And then if somebody won't, never mind. I'll wait for a second. Pardon me.
Do we have Councillor Kemp second?
Yeah, no, I think to Councillor Parslow's point earlier, if he wants to make a separate motion about maybe taking some time to review the liaison policy and issue an offer to other community groups, that would be appropriate. But with respect to this one ask that's before us, I think the Performing Arts Center is a city facility. They do a lot of good work in there, and I don't see how having a more open line of communication between us and them does anything but help.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, whilst there's a great deal of logic in what our CAO said, I've just again posed the question. We have a great deal of it, it's just as another example, a great deal of investment in the exhibition, the Lakota Center, the stables, and also the Fall Fair and those grounds. And so maybe it would be wise to reflect on what the CAO has said and see if we think we should be proactive and have liaisons with every group, that we have some investment of money. For new council members, what is it, 120 odd thousand a year goes to the Fall Fair operation, as an example. It's in the hundreds of thousands towards the support of the Lakota operation of that part of the facility. just as two examples. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
I would just suggest Councilor Parslow's point there that we cannot force ourselves upon these groups, just as if you want our money, you have to take us on as well, right? I agree that we should at least wait for the invitation first, not make it part of the deal. You come ask us for money, but you have to take us on as a liaison as well.
Thank you. Is there,
I don't want to range off topic with respect to what Councilors Parslow and McDonald were saying, but we do have, with respect to lease agreements with nonprofits, as part of those, there are reporting requirements for oversight. So that's kind of where the I guess accountability piece for taxpayers lies. But yeah, the liaison thing is how I imagined it was more we can make the offer and let people know it's an option, because I think some people don't even know it's an option or they wouldn't consider it. So anyway,
thank you, Councillor Earl. Just want to keep in mind we have a motion on the floor, so I'd like the discussion to keep to this motion. So, Councillor Parslow.
The motion reads, what is the motion?
That we are going to appoint a liaison to the Kiwanis Performing Arts Center.
So you don't want me to comment on the previous councillors' comment?
No, I think if there's other stuff that's outside of this, then there should be a notice of motion under new councillors' business that we can bring back and talk about this as a
It's
different,
directly related to the business at hand.
to the Kiwanis Performing Arts Center.
Two liaisons. I mean,
I'll allow it to go. What would you like to say?
well, I'm just trying to say that notwithstanding the fact that we do have these contracts, service agreements and so on, we do have liaisons with most of those groups, such as the Art Gallery, the Mile Zero Park Society. We have liaisons in addition to the security of the contract. So thank you.
Blair?
Your Worship, through you to council, it may be, and I will throw this out as a suggestion, we have a motion on the floor responding to a request from the Kiwanis Performing Arts. If council so wish to move it further and look at other options or opportunities to put liaisons in, an amendment to this motion may be in order. I don't believe it changes the intent that you appoint a liaison to KPAC and mayor and council determine or pursue the other community groups that the councillor, it could come under that, or it could come under a new motion. I think either way. So.
Okay, thank you, Blair. Is there anybody? Okay, Councillor McDonald.
We still need a seconder for
No, we've had a
Jeremy's
second.
motion. Did we get a seconder for Jeremy's? We did?
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
yeah. Without second, we can't discuss. So, yeah, thank you though. I guess part of this discussion too, is there a councillor that's interested in stepping forward? Okay, Councillor Earl, you want to put your name forward to be the liaison for the KPAC? Okay. So do we need an amendment to add Councillor Earl to that motion?
No, through your worship, the mayor has the authority to appoint
Okay.
liaisons to committees.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or? No? Okay, I'll call this motion to vote. The vote is closed. It's carried. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Earl, for putting your name forward. Next on the agenda is 8 reports. We got 8.1. We have report number 22-124 from the Director of Infrastructure. Reason the request for quotations 2022-31 washed rock supply and delivery. Councillor Parslow.
I move that report number 22-124 from the Director of Infrastructure, request for quotations 2022-31 wash rock supply and delivery be received. Further, that council award request for quotations 2022-31 wash rock supply and delivery to Nels Ostero Limited for the bid price of $43.90 per ton plus GST.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McDonald? Any discussion? Councillor Parslow, did you have something?
Nothing, the report speaks for itself.
Okay. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through you to staff, if I could. How does this price compare to the previous contract? It's something I'm curious about as we head through a period of high inflation. What is the differential, and can we expect this to similarly continue for other services and things we buy?
Sure. Through your worship. In 2020, we put out a similar tender, and at that time we had 4 bids. The low was $40.15, and the high was actually $51. So if we look from 2020 to now, it's gone up about $3.75, about 9%. And this price that we received on this one, they're holding for the next 3 years, which is important as well. So that does give us some cost certainty. So,
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Councillor Earl. Any more questions? No. I'd like to call this motion to vote. The vote is closed. It's carried. Next, we have 8.2, report number 22-125 from the Chief Financial Officer, reason 2023 Draft 1 Budget Report. Councillor Parslow? Sorry, the presentation's going to come first? Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is draft 1 of the 2023 budget. So finding the balance for a strong financial future. So the overarching vision set by Council 3 years ago was to move towards a strong financial future for Dawson Creek. This will be achieved by balancing the Peace River Agreement funding towards a solid capital infrastructure program and continuing to deliver services that are valued by residents. Council had approved a 4.5% increase to the mill rate in 2023, with 1.5% going towards the city's paving program, and this was approved in September 2022. The 2023 Peace River Agreement allocation to capital is proposed at 54%. The city entered into long-term borrowing in 2022 for capital paving projects, which is $5 million annually over the next 4 years, which will be coordinated with the city's water and sewer upgrades as well. The city will be undertaking hiring a consultant to collaborate with city staff to create a robust asset management plan in 2023. So again, the proposed mill rate increase is set at 4.5%. Overall operating revenues have increased by 3.9% from 2022. Overall operating expenses have increased by 4.81% from 2022. The long-term MFA borrowing interest rate is currently posted at 4.19%. 2 months ago, it was 3.56%. Again, 54% of PRA is allocated into capital projects, and as stated in the orientation, the budget was mainly done in Questica, so allowed staff to use the salary module that allows for more accurate estimates on wages and benefits, as well as allocating to appropriate service departments. Mill rate. So 2022 versus 2023, the mill rate for residential is set at 6.5182. commercial is 19.6929, which are the major two, as you can see. So this is just 2022's assessment with 2023's mill rate, and it just says the percentage of the total. So again, residential makes up 42.7% of the revenue and commercial makes up 50.3%. This slide just shows, I apologize, it should say 2022 versus 2023. This slide just gives you an idea of assessed values of houses with the proposed tax rate and what the taxes would be. So this doesn't include collection of other government agencies, BC Assessment, school tax, PRD, hospital district. This is strictly municipal taxes. So funding sources, this just breaks down the funding sources. So taxes are making up 30%. Peace River Agreement money is making up 23%, and fees and charges are making up 22% of the revenue source. So I assume most of you know, but I wasn't sure. So property taxes are calculated by taking the assessed value provided by BC Assessment and dividing it by 1,000 and then multiplying it by the annual tax rate. So council has no control over the assessed values within this jurisdiction of Dawson Creek, only the annual property tax rates, which are passed by council through the bylaw after adoption of the 5-year financial plan prior to May 15th. Increasing tax rates is necessary if the city wants to establish reserves to replace its aging infrastructure. This is just a little tidbit. So using last year's tax rate, if we do percentage increases, a lot of people think that 1% makes up a lot of revenue, but this is just to show that a 1% tax increase only generates $184,000. Excuse me. A 2% increase would generate about 370. A 3% generates about 555. 4% generates about 740, and a 5% increase is still under $1 million at 925. So this is just the fees and charges breakdown. You can't really see it. Yeah. Well, yeah. So this is operational expenses by service function. So this is the same thing, but 2023 expenses, the percentage of the operational budget compared to 2022. This is all broken down in your budget book again. You have detail. This is the debt servicing schedule from 2023 to 2032. Again, this is a projection because when I was compiling this, I used the interest rate of 4.19%. So it could go up, it could go down. It's a projection, but 2023 is pretty accurate. So total debt servicing for 2023 is $4,050,000. That's hard to see. 4.305. That's what I thought. 4.05. So total capital expenditures in 2023 are $33,364,334. Of that, it's broken down by department, so airport facilities, paving, sidewalks. Again, a detailed breakdown of each of the projects is in Appendix F of your budget book. So this is just a breakdown of the new capital and the carry forward capital. So the new capital totals 26.6 million roughly. And of that 26.6 million, there are a few projects that will only move forward if we get grant funding. So one of them being the Harvest View multi-use trail, which we applied to UBCM for $6 million. Also, the airport looks like it's really high. However, most of that is through ACAP funding. So that, again, won't proceed unless we get that funding as well. So we're looking at about 18 without those two. So the capital funding sources, Peace River Agreement, the paving levy, conditional grants you can see are almost $10.4 million. Grants from gas tax, water and sewer infrastructure. We use the equipment pool reserve, the borrowing, and capital reserve for the carry forwards of $6.4 million. this is just a history of the Peace River monies to operating versus capital. So again, we are at 54% for 2023, and 46% is going to operating, with 15% of that being debt servicing. And that is that. Any questions?
Thanks, Terry. Any questions? We allowed a question on the presentation, or do we need a motion first?
I know, I wasn't sure either.
I would allow questions.
Okay, thanks, Brenda. Any questions on the Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. My dominant thought right now is how sorry I feel for new council members dealing with this. And I think some of the decision points maybe will, through further discussions about budget, become clearer. So I really liked your first page. And the last item on your first page deals with having a robust capital asset management plan. And I certainly support the suggestion in there of how we might achieve that. And one of the things that is a decision point later on in your presentation is that the mill rate would have to be adjusted upwards if we're going to fund that capital asset management plan in the 2022-23 budget year, right? Is that the right budget year? In the next budget year, at any rate. Yeah, and it's fair to say, really, that the magnitude of that challenge will present itself to council once you have the finalized capital asset inventory and the length of future service of our buildings. But it's a very significant amount of money which will require, if it's to be robust and to have any meaning, a great deal of funding. But I'm suggesting that maybe we do nothing on that area for next year so that new members of council get a stronger feel for the problem, and that we had that consultant's work done. So that's just my thoughts about that aspect of it. That that's just throwing that out for reflection, right? So yes, sorry.
Sorry, can I just get a bit of clarification? Are you proposing that we push the asset management plan to 2024?
No, I
Okay.
said we should have the consultants' work done.
Okay.
And then we have a clear picture of
Okay.
the asset management plan and the funding needed to be robust about that. The second is just something I picked up and reflected on at the in-camera meeting. So I can't talk, yes, I can talk about that. I believe I can. It's really just an accounting issue, but one of the things that we consistently hear from whether it's consultants or is the amount of money in our recreation budget as a total. And Shantae's presentation, where she had that nice pie graph, and we had in that pie graph the multiplex. And the multiplex is considered by many to be a major economic development driver. Is it not more appropriately, a significant portion of that, more appropriately budgeted in the economic development area rather than recreation? Because I think it distorts the, when people talk about other communities and they talk about our recreation budget and other communities of similar size, it's unfair to our recreation department who is carrying within that budget envelope the support for the multiplex. So I'm just throwing that out to try to put the recreation budget in a a more distinct package rather than having that significant. I mean, part of the multiplex is recreation. Don't get me wrong. But if you look at the percentages, which are fairly consistent as it relates to the event center, about really it's like a 1/3 from Alberta, 1/3 from north of the Peace, 1/3 south Peace. That might be some way of dividing. But the Lakota Center has all sorts of events that draw people here from outside. So Lakota Center has some recreation to it, but it's also an economic development driver. The swimming pool has some people come here on certain days from Alberta. It's more primarily local, but not exclusively. So I'm just throwing that out as a concern in defense of the recreation department, but also possibly a more valid way of doing cost comparisons with other jurisdictions. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parslow.
If council wishes for the Oventive to go in economic development for draft 2, I can, that's an easy fix. And I agree with you. It does skew recreation's numbers.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for, because I am new, how do our mill rates compare to our surrounding communities?
Yeah, actually, I think they're probably in the middle. Well, surrounding communities. So Fort St. John, ours is higher, but they have a much higher tax base. So compared to them, I'd have to look into that.
Okay, and I'm sorry.
Excuse me, through you, Your Worship, on that, there is work done by the UBCM each year as well, talking about taxes, the rates, and so on. We have that. Traditionally, Dawson Creek has fallen about the middle of the pack, although you'll hear some people say we have the highest taxes in the province. Unfortunately, that's not factual. Right in the middle of the pack is where it is. The key issue really is based on assessment.
Right.
So many places may have a much higher assessment so they can have a much lower mill rate. So that comparative it's probably easier to say based on a basic 3-bedroom home, your average tax bill is X. But when we talk about that, very important to differentiate your municipal taxes versus everything else. We collect for the school, we collect for the regional district, the hospital, and so on, BC assessment. So there are comparatives that we can get you for that, and it'll give you a very good overview.
Okay. And then for, our asset management plan, what kind of investment opportunities are out there for us to help build that capital moving forward?
Are you referring to like grants to?
No, even, if we're gonna squirrel away money, what can we do with that money to build it, right?
Yeah, I don't think that there's very many grants that you can get that you could just put away in a reserve. It's usually for projects per se. So
Right.
So we could offset projects, in operations to try and save that way to put away for reserves.
Okay.
But grant wise, I don't know of many grants that you could get to.
But if we're allocating money in our budget to say we need a replacement for the Kin Arena, we need to build that nest egg, what are we able to do as a municipality to invest those funds, to grow those funds over a 10-year period?
I have been actively investing the city's money actually, and it's doing quite well because the highest interest rate I have right now is 5%, which is
That is
quite high
good.
So it's been, I think this year alone, the city's earned over $1 million in interest. So it's something I'm always thinking about. However, cash flows, because we're not guaranteed our tax base by July 2nd, it's always cash flows are something you really have to pay attention to. But finance is actively investing money to try to earn extra money to offset.
Okay.
And anything that is in surplus right now, the majority of it is invested. Less what I need for cash flow.
Okay.
Thank you. Larry, did
Through
you
you,
wanna-
Your Worship, just one other thing on our asset management plan. As we develop this plan, I think, as Councillor Parslow has said, the one very important thing we're going to have to recognize in budgets going forward, we aren't talking about putting away 100,000 or 300. We're talking multiple millions of dollars per year in order to fund the $200+ million of assets we have in our city. So some very challenging decisions coming forward when you start to build upon that. That's money that we collect today that's allocated to a set spot that we're going to be looking to reallocate, increase revenue, somehow that balance. So it's, as a friend of mine once told me, it's not a challenge, it's an opportunity, but it is going to be quite an opportunity.
Thank you, Blair. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just one thing with respect to, one or two things, pardon me, with respect to the debt servicing schedule. So this is presumptive of the 4.5 rate and predicated upon council fulfilling its $20 million borrowing plan. I was curious to see if at some point we could get a breakout of what the debt servicing would be without the, because we've borrowed $5 million this last year, and that was at a much lower interest rate
3.36
prior to inflation and interest rates doing what they've done. Initially I was kind of lukewarm on borrowing because it's not my first goal, but recognizing the state of our roads and that the longer you leave it, the more expensive it gets, I did come on board. As these other variables shift, that becomes that cost benefit analysis definitely changes for me. So I'd be interested in seeing the differential. Moreover, given the amount of work we carried over from year to year, the notion that we'd borrow money when we've still got some work to be done concerns me. I'd rather not be paying interest or servicing debt if we've got money we're not able to spend in a year due to any number of factors. So that would be very interesting to me and certainly inform, because we've tentatively agreed to that $20 million borrowing, but it is something council has to affirm every year. And 4.5% interest, or I think could get another bump before this is all over, or two. We'll change that. I would say to the public, the $5 million we borrowed for roads to do the work this year, I think was money well spent, even with the debt servicing incurred, simply because it would have costed significantly more to have delayed that. But this is one of the challenges we face as a council in getting you value for dollars and ensuring that we're, and trying to time it is very difficult, but it would help me in making that decision if we could get that
Yeah,
breakout.
I'm more than happy to get that for you.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. All right, is there anything else on the presentation? Oh, Blair?
I would just, through your worship, point out one thing for the public who may be watching today. When we went through our capital expenditures, the sidewalks showed $6+ million in sidewalks. Over 6.54, I believe. If I'm,
Yeah.
6.6.
About 6 million of that is the walking trail around town that we talked about for grants. So I just didn't want there to be confusion from the public thinking we were doing $6 million in sidewalks, although we may need that spent over the entire city. That is not the cost we're investing this year. So just for a point of clarification.
Thank you, Blair. All right. Oh, Councillor Parslow, were you?
Subject to your approval, I'm prepared to make the recommendation.
Okay, yeah.
But if you want further discussions.
No, I was done with discussions on that.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, Councillor Parslow.
So I'd like to move the report number 22125 from the Chief Financial Officer, re 2023 Draft 1 Budget Report be received. Further, that Council accept and approve the 2023 tax rate structure, operational plan and capital plan included in the Draft 1 2023 financial plan.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Apollonio. Discussion. Councillor Parslow, did you?
I'd like to speak to the
Yes.
motion. So this is draft 1. There will be 3 drafts. There will be updates made as we get more accurate information. And so there'll be lots of opportunity for engagement. And it's a challenge understanding the budget, but it comes. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And thank you, Terry, for having it ready.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parslow. Is there any other discussion? Draft? No? Okay, I'll call that motion to vote. The vote is closed. It's carried. Next order of business, we have 9 bylaws. 9.1, the financial plan amendment bylaw number 4539, 2022 for consideration of adoption. Motion to adopt. Councillor Earl, second Councillor Kempf. Any discussion? No. I will call the vote. The vote is closed. All right, I am going to just call a 5-minute recess, and then we'll get back. So meeting with Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, November 21st, back to order. Our next order of business was 10 mayor's business, so 10.1 mayor's update. First, the regional council orientation we had, I think that was a while ago now. Feels like it was years ago, but I think it was 3 weeks ago. Just that it was, very well perceived, and wanted to put a thank you out to all the communities and the government bodies that attended it, and also a big thank you out to our staff. Joe especially did a lot. I'm a lot at the event to make it successful, so thank you to yourself. And I know there's a lot of other staff that helped with that, so I just wanted to express a sincere thank you to you. So thank you. And to make my life easier going through emceeing and helping you with it. So thank you. Two, I'd like to just another thank you to the Ravalli Ravalli family for their donation. Almost said Ravalli Farms, but it has been out, and I think most are aware, but the Ravalli family, so Ross, Cindy, Kristen, and Kaylin have donated $75,000 to our new tennis court pickleball courts that are being built. So I just wanted to put a thank you out, and then I also just wanted to let council know that I was thinking of writing a letter a thank you letter from mayor and council. So I was wanting to do that as well. So. Next, the YMCA childcare. Councillor.
Do you require a motion of council for that, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't
Just
think
wanted
so.
to make sure.
No, I just wanted to make sure everybody was okay with. Just wanted to make sure everybody was okay with that. So, next, the YMCA childcare in School District 59. There's just been some talk about YMCA does a lot in our community already, so there's some potential opportunities for us to grow with them, and so I just a quick update that I've had meetings with them in School District 59, and it's kind of being processed along, but nothing's came forward yet. So once that does, I'll keep everybody in the loop posted on that as well. Next, we had the class from Frank Ross from Miss Gauda's class come up here to City Hall. We gave her a tour of the city. The Parks and Rec downstairs did an amazing job doing the tour down there. That was their highlight of it, was the jail cells in City Hall. But then we also had them come up to council, and we sat in council chambers, and we did like mock scenarios of different things. They did delegations and presentations on ideas they had, and it was amazing, to be honest. One, the educational piece for them, but for me as well, and their delegations, their questions were real questions in the communities. So it was just really neat to be part of that. I've requested that they sent all the letters to me as well that they did forward, and I had some of their questions we've dealt with in the past. So Kevin has looked into those and is going to sit down with myself, and I'm going to respond to all of them, and possibly go up to the school and respond with them. But yeah, it was just really nice to have them in here, and it was a great hour. So 5, also the bear attack fundraiser that I attended for the two ladies that, we're in that unfortunate circumstances, but a lot of good came out of that, and mostly that they're here with us today. So, but I also wanted a big shout out to our community. Like always, when people are in trouble and in need, this community, is amazing on how it all comes together to help and. To help people through those tough times. So I was at the event. There was 340 people there, I believe, like with numerous amounts of donations. None of it surprised me because it's Dawson Creek and we do this all the time. But I was very proud to be there and proud, for this to be called my city. So I wanted to put a thank you out to all those people that attended it, supported it, helped. Ed Ma and Natasha were a huge part of organizing that. So it was great. So, Councillor?
Okay, because of course, that of course, the Beretta Lady is coming from our community. Actually, they're so thankful to everyone for all the efforts. Even me, the Filipino community are overwhelmed by your support, by everybody's support, because we never realized, of course, it's a tragic event, but of course, the community coming together to help them, us, for example, warms our heart. And seeing the people around that day, even our fundraising before November, I think this October earlier, 2 weeks earlier, it was a good turnout. Just an update, the other ladies who was severely attacked by the bear was back again here in Dawson Creek after major surgery in Vancouver. So she was back now in Bear Mountain House. So all good for the two ladies. Again, they're extending their help, their happiness, joy, and for all the support and love they got from the community. And I will speak to Mayor to your worship because she offered something to the family as well about the plane ticket of the family that will come here, like the mother and the nephew, because they need to take care of one of the severely attacked ladies. So thank you very much again, and again, God bless.
Thank you, Councillor Apollonio. And just to comment on the air flights, that was personal, not through the city. So
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
but 6th, the Remembrance Day ceremony. I had the honor of being there on Remembrance Day. It was absolutely amazing to be there and just to honor those. Those that have give the ultimate sacrifice for what we have today. And it truly was just an absolute honor to be part of that ceremony. And first time I've really been part of one like that since I was younger and in high school. But it was, it definitely won't be the last one. It was amazing to be part of that. So next, the Nurse Appreciation event that we co-sponsored. Dale touched a little bit on that earlier this morning, but I did attend last week. There was I think there was 20 some nurses there, but it was very well perceived and a great event. And I just thank them for their service and what they do for our healthcare and our community from all of us. Next, which isn't on the list because I attended the Christmas tree light up on Friday. Councillor Earl spoke a little bit about that too and thanked the Rotary Club and the South Peace Oil Mills. But it was, one thing that I forgot when I talked at the Christmas tree light up is I forgot to thank the person that donated the Christmas tree, which happens to be my mom. So it didn't go over that well. But thankfully, Paul Juvetkoff saved me right after and thanked my mom first. So, it was an absolute amazing experience to be there. The streets were lined up. There had to be 1,000 people from Dawson down there. When I stood up on the stage, it was as far as it was closed. There was people lined up. So it was just amazing to see that many people out again. And the lights and the holiday spirit. I don't know. It's just amazing. It's an amazing time of year, and I think we can learn something from that and practice these things in our everyday life about that. It's about caring and love and giving back. And it was just amazing to be part of it and see how many people from our community were out and kids dancing and and of course a huge shout out to the South Peace Oil Mills and the Rotary Club for all the work they put into it. Because without them and all the other organizations in Dawson Creek, we wouldn't have these things. So those were my main mayor updates. Is there any questions on those or any comments or anything? No? Okay. Next, I'd like to 10.2, we had the delegation this morning from the South Peace Health Service Society. So I would like to agree to the request to reconsider the motion on October. Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Sudnick.
Conflict again as a voting member of the Health Society, so I will step out.
Okay, thank you. I knew that and I forgot. Thank you. All right, so I'd like to agree to, the request was to reconsider our motion on October 21st that the utility costs for the city-owned property located at 1608 106th Avenue be the responsibility of the South Peace Health Service Society. So just going to reconsider that motion to be back on the floor for discussion. And then considering the delegation this morning, when it comes time to vote, I'll vote against this motion and then look for a new motion based on the delegation. So is there any discussion around this motion that's being reconsidered? Councillor Earl, you did push first. Okay, Councillor Earl.
Just so the motion you'll be voting against was the original one, which was to decline the request to cover the utilities, correct?
Yeah, that the original motion that's on the floor right now is that the utility costs for the city-owned property located at 1608 106th Avenue be the responsibility of the South Peace Health Service Society.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough for me. I articulated my concerns to Dale when he was here around, you know, it's $5,000 in the context of a $50 million budget. Might not seem like a lot of money, but those peanuts add up, and pretty soon you got a mountain of peanuts. And once we upload that onto ourselves, I don't imagine Northern Health or the Ministry of Health is going to step in and graciously cover that, you know, and this is hearkening back to my time at the Hospital Foundation, is trying to thread that needle between, you know, going above and beyond and doing your part to make sure the community isn't doing without, but not doing it so well that you allow Northern Health and other levels of government to abdicate their responsibility for providing the services that people have already paid taxes for. And I think at a provincial level, we do pay taxes to have our hospitals staffed. If that isn't something we can adequately do to the extent where we need to bring in, you know, droves of locums to make sure we still have accurate or, you know, equitable and appropriate health care, I still think it would be appropriate that Northern Health or the province cover these costs to accommodate people. And that's my frustration here is, you know, we're in a tough spot because if we don't do it, conceivably our community goes without. People have worse healthcare, for lack of a better term. Not, you know, they don't have as robust a healthcare system to rely on. I don't want to imply that the healthcare people get isn't good or the people who work in healthcare here aren't doing a phenomenal job, but that's the frustration, and I'm still kind of tepid on the idea of us uploading that onto ourselves forevermore.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Just some information refresher, perhaps, from staff. The other operating costs for this locum house, let's call it that, they're being borne by the South Peace Society. I'm thinking insurance as an example.
Yes, they are.
And renovations?
Fully through them, not the city.
Right, through Northern Health.
Through the South Peace Health Services Society.
Through the South Peace
believe,
Health
yes.
Services
Yeah.
Society. Are there any other operating costs I've left out?
No, the grounds, I believe, would be looked after by them as well. So I can think of no cost. We have a draft lease agreement drawn up. We haven't executed yet. We're working on that at a very minimal cost. It's $1 a year. So that is the only cost, unless Shantae, I have missed something.
Right. And that will accommodate one person, or is it possibility of a second?
I believe they're looking at the possibility of a second, and part of the renovations was to put one of the rooms into a second bedroom, I believe.
Right. Thank you.
I think one thing too, just with the South Peace Health Society, like I like about what they deliver is that they're about showing off Dawson Creek and what we're about. And, you know, I know when they talked about nurses coming here and about getting them vehicles so they can get out and see our community. The other part is maybe one of these doctors comes here, these nurses, and sees those parts of our community and how we are. And, you know, maybe they're the next person that wants to move here, right? And see that we're a great community. I know that's nothing to do with this part, but the other part is, you know, it's tough, right? All these northern communities and remote communities and even the bigger centers are having troubles getting, you know, doctors and nurses. And, you know, whether it's on Northern Health or whatever those health authorities are, I mean, they're paying for those doctors and nurses to get here. There's other costs that come with it. And other communities are, you know, getting very creative on things to attract other professions. So, yeah, so. Councillor McDonald?
Further to what Councillor Earl was saying, are we an easy first ask for the South Peace Health Society? Do we honestly believe they have gone down every other road to try and find funding for this previously, or has it just been the city's an easy ask for these funds? Is this something they can, you know, at least get a percentage of before they come see us? I agree with Councillor Earl. Once we take it on, the province won't touch it. It's done. If they can go and say, listen, the citizens, the business community itself is paying for this, it's a much easier road for them to try and get the province or Northern Health to help fund it. Once we take it on, it's done. It'll be ours forever.
I don't have the answer to that. Blair, do you have, like, do you, or maybe you could talk a little bit too about the other leases here too. I don't know if that would make.
Through your worship, I am not sure who they have spoken to. I can't speak to that on behalf of the South Peace Health Service Society. They would have to, you know, come to council again and answer that question. Other leases we have in the city, they pay a portion of their costs on utilities. We have 15%. We've just entered into 5 new lease agreements with the Kiwanis Performing Arts Center, the curling rink, and so on. That covers 15% of 6 line items within their budget, not 15% of the entire operating, but 15%, which would include utilities. So, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. I guess, well, we have a motion on the floor, so we'll have to call that. If there is another motion and we wanted to request more information, we could put this off, or is it?
Your worship, I believe the protocol that you're about to follow is to vote on the motion again. If that vote is defeated, Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, then you're back to your motion as passed. If this motion is are they voting completely again to say, do we want to exempt them or have them pay?
Through your worship, the motion on the floor at the moment is the motion from October 21st. And if it is defeated and another motion is presented, then you can deal with it at that time.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if you vote in favor of the motion, it would mean the South Peace Health Services Society pays the utilities. If you vote against the motion on the floor, it would mean we would have to look at something different, or the city would be on the hook.
A new motion, yeah. Okay. Is there any more discussion? Oh, Councillor Apollonio?
Sorry, of course, I'm just new. Of course, as I said, I think if, I don't know who's responsible about about this society or about the building, but I think if Northern Health could afford paying, I'm sorry to say this, travel nurses or, I know we have this money. How about shelling only $5,000 a month? I think the utilities, maybe they could afford it a year. Maybe they could afford it because I know we're spending a lot. I know we need these people on our community to address the shortage of healthcare provider. But if just only amount like this, maybe they could cover that cost from that area. I'm not sure. That's it.
I don't know, Blair, if you know that, I don't. Like with Northern Health, I know that's why this committee was created, because there's, it's about helping and retaining, getting and retaining.
Through you, Your Worship, I do not have information on the discussions the Health Society has had with Northern Health or what dialogue they've had whatsoever. So I would be very hesitant to even take a guess at that. That's completely separate. Their ask originally was of the city, because we own the property. We have agreed to enter into a lease with them. Part of that was we'll lease it to you for $1 a year, but you will be responsible for the insurance and your utilities and such to run it. That was passed by yourselves. We're now talking about a reconsideration that says, look, the lease is still $1, but we will cover the utilities. So as far as their discussion with Northern Health, that would be out of our realm as a city on that.
Okay. And because this motion's open back on the floor, is it, like, I'm not sure if it's time sensitive for the South Peace Health Society, but is it possible, like, if I decided to table this until we got more information, if I felt like we don't have enough information to vote on this right now? Or how does that?
A motion to table is non-debatable, I believe. And if it passes, then it would be tabled. If it fails, then you're back to the motion before you today.
Okay. Councillor Parslow?
Just a point of order. Isn't the motion more appropriately a motion to defer?
Or defer, yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to get that word right.
Table is, you've got rid of it, but defer is you're going to come back to it. Am I correct? No?
No, through your worship, when you table a motion, you deal with it again later in the same meeting.
In the same meeting, but
Yes.
defers a future meeting. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship. And I guess if we're going to defer it, this isn't really urgent, but just a question through you to staff. What if the city were to reconsider and end up covering the cost of utilities, what budget would that come out of? Would that come out of our grant budget? Would that come out of, it's all the other agreements we have, I think, are with recreation and cultural services, but this doesn't fit well within that. We don't have a line item budget for healthcare because, once again, we're a municipal government.
Through your worship, the answer to that is right now it would be out of grants. It is not, as we've just seen the draft one budget, we have not accounted for that. We have followed the motion that was before us originally. So there is no money in the budget for this. It would come from a grant allocation, should council opt to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Parslow?
Well, I'd like to move that we defer this decision until a meeting held, the second meeting of December.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Earl? Councillor Parslow? Or
Well,
Blair?
the reason for that is the mayor's inquiry about is there more information? So if there is some more information that you think is necessary, I think the right thing is to defer the decision.
Okay, I agree. And I guess the more information there was three councillors that brought up about Northern Health covering the costs, and I don't seem to feel that we have the information whether Northern Health can or can't do that, and it might be something that we need to get from the South Peace Health Service Society, a little bit more information around that.
I wasn't challenging that.
No, yeah, I was just clarifying why I did. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Blair?
Through your worship, just maybe for clarity, I believe Mr. Bumstead during his presentation stated that Northern Health is not part of this. The locums, when they come in, fund their own accommodation. So they would pay for their own hotel room. They would pay for such things. This and the Northern Health doesn't fund that. So I just want to be very clear. If you're asking on a deferral motion for us to bring you more information, I'm not clear as to what information you would be looking for from administration.
Councillor Earl?
And I take that, I also got that impression from Mr. Bumstead that he mentioned they're willing to fund emergency or acute accommodations for emergency care. But given that they've got an agreement with Northern Health on location, that does also provide housing for locums, and there's a fee associated with that from what I gathered. I don't know if it's entirely unprecedented, and I'd like a bit more clarification around that. Similarly, once again, I think there's an argument to be made here is that the need for locums is what it is, not due to anything this council has done, but that is once again in their ballpark. So it while it might not be something they'd normally do, they do have a stake in helping us address this issue. So I mean, I'm fine. I want to make sure. My one concern about the deferral till the second part of December is it's not going to needlessly impede the timelines of the Health Services Society. They didn't seem to mention they were on a pressing clock, but yeah, no, I'm fine deferring till we get more information. I also think it would be worthwhile to ask our grant writer to spend some time finding what other funding sources are available for this. There might be programs through PNG and BC Hydro that they can apply for as a nonprofit to help offset those costs. Once again, to Councillor McDonald's point, are we the first to ask, and is there other resources available?
Councillor Parslow?
Well, I appreciate what our CAO has said, but Councillor McDonald raised a very astute, made an astute observation. And I think the other source of information is what efforts has been made by the South Peace Health Society in securing funding from other philanthropic groups or grants. We don't know, and I think that would be important because I'm not commenting specifically on the South Peace Health Society, but that notion that essentially the easy place to get money is the city is out there in the community, and if you don't know it, it's there and alive and healthy. But really, people should. I mean, the South Peace Health Society has raised a lot of money, and done a lot of things. So I'm not talking about that, but I bet you there are some organizations here, if they were aware of this, they would like to probably consider stepping up to the mark and being part of the solution. So I think that's the sort of information, and notwithstanding what you said about Northern Health.
Yeah, I think maybe after I'm done, I'll just ask you, Blair, if you got clarity on what the ask is to defer. The other part is for me about just a lot of our other leases with the 15%, that we charge back. Like, to me, it's just about being a little bit more consistent on what we offer out. So, I know this is maybe a little different than the KPAC in some aspects, but it is a service that we offer, a building we own, land we own. And these other 5 or 6 leases that are done up, there's, those were put in place to get some consistency amongst city-owned property. So I kind of like the fact of having some consistency with this one too. Like, if we were to, pay it all or not pay it all, like, it's, a little inconsistent with others. I know each will be unique in their own offerings, but it's just, kind of my thoughts. So, Blair?
It's just, I guess, not to belabor it. So what we're being asked under the deferral for more information is to reach out to Mr. Bumstead to see if he has exhausted all avenues to cover the cost of this, or do you want our staff to begin investigating grant we could eat the $5,000 if that's the number up very quickly, doing hours and hours of work is what I'm trying to say. So would it be to reach out to the South Peace Health Services Society to see if they have exhausted all avenues to help them cover this cost and bring that information back? I just want to be clear. So when our staff go to work on this, we bring you the information you need to make the decision.
Well, and I know I can just a little bit on that. I know a little bit with the South Peace Health Society, but they are paying for the renovations in the house, which I think is $40,000 or $50,000, which they've got money from outside companies, and they're looking at, looking after the snow removal and mowing the lawn, which has been donated. So they are, they're not asking for everything from us. They've, there's a lot of funding that's come in to help with this stuff. So, Councillor Parslow.
Well, my reason for making the motion is basically in support of the mayor's statement about needing sense of having need for more information, right? I think you've curtailed it for Northern Health, and certainly, I think my impression is people want to know is all other avenues being expended of raising money for this ongoing operating expense. If I may comment on something you just said about the other groups and consistency, that could be a bunny hole we don't want to go in, because if we're saying, well, health is going to be now embraced as part of, like, on the same basis as maybe the curling club or historical society, that we might take on, let's say, 15% of this locum place, as we take on a bit of the responsibility for a society focused on health. What if there was another society developed around securing qualified teachers for our community? Would we then pay expect to support them in the same way as other societies? I mean, it could just mushroom. That's just my initial response. I may have misunderstood you, but anyway, I believe the intent of my motion is the need perhaps to get clarity about what efforts, who's been approached, so that we can know that we're not the first place of call, so to speak.
So to clarify, I guess to you, Blair, would that be a matter of us, if this was to defer and pass, of asking Mr. Bumstead to come back in so we could ask these questions and get some clarification? So we're not, staff's not spending hours and hours.
Through your worship, I think we can make the call to Mr. Bumstead and very shortly have an answer for you. I mean, so depending on when we wrap up today, if we were to break at lunch and had to be back in this meeting after lunch, I'm sure we could have an answer for you by then even. But I believe, and I would look for clarity from Brenda, a deferral motion can be brought back at any time, though? It doesn't have to wait till the next meeting?
So I was just wondering if we could change it to tabling, but if we can be brought back today, then on a break, maybe we could reach out.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. Do I need to call the vote to defer?
Yes.
To take.
Yes, okay.
So just to. Yes, it does. Yeah, Jeremy. So is the motion the current motion on the floor is to defer?
To defer the current motion on the
So
floor.
is that changed to be tabling the motion?
Well, if I can bring back a defer at any time, does it need to be changed?
No, that's fine. If the information does come back today, then.
Okay.
The motion was to defer it to the second meeting of December was the thing, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm willing to make a friendly amendment if the secretary agree, and the mayor would allow such a.
Is that friendly, Brenda? I don't
That's
know.
a traditional way of doing it.
You had seconded the motion? Table.
No, I think change it from, on the original deferral was to defer it to the December 5th meeting. So we just want to remove that December 5th part.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess just before I call this to vote, I know there's a couple in queue to talk, but is it questions to clarify to the CAO? I just want to make sure the CAO knows what he's calling about. So before we defer that, so if there's anything else.
Through your worship, I will make the call to Mr. Bumstead to ask him if all avenues have been exhausted as far as funding of the utility bill that they have asked the city to fund, in essence. That's the direct question I'm asking. Have they pursued grants? Have they looked to the community? And we will bring an answer back to you on that.
Okay. So is there anything else from any other councilors before, based on that?
I was just going to ask
Oh,
about inviting
just what? Second.
Mr. Bumstead back. So that if,
Just 1 second, please.
sorry.
I'll get Councillor Apollonia. Did you have?
Just some curiosity. I don't know how the Ronald McDonald's in Vancouver operates. I don't know if they're funded by the Vancouver government. I'm not sure, and I'm just guessing. Maybe we are being approached. At least they want to see maybe the city has a part on this house. Maybe I'm not sure, but as I said, like what Councillor Parslow said, it might mushroom. If we might, but unless the intention is just to represent the city of Dawson Creek, a part of this South Peace or this Buteres house, so at least maybe that's the intention. But yeah, it's a deferral, I think, or maybe further discussion.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, and I was just on par with you about requesting more information from Mr. Bumstead or requesting that he come back in. Are we able to invite him back in so that if we have multiple questions that arise just from the information he gives back to us, we can continue with him? Or does that affect us with the 15-minute delegation issue?
No, I believe through your worship, probably the way I would see this unfolding, if the motion to table passes, we will make the phone call. We will bring an answer back to you as quickly as we have that. At that point, if you have further questions, we could defer that decision or table it until you invite Mr. Bumstead back. Okay.
I guess one other question, Blair, I have to you when you're talking to Mr. Bumstead is just to ask him, like, in that scenario, it gets deferred to December 5th, if that was the case.
Will it create
if this
an issue?
time sensitive for them? So if they need an answer today,
Yeah, I
whether we're
believe
doing it or not.
We're still working on the lease, Brenda, with them at this point. I don't believe, but I'll confirm on the time sensitive side for you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call the motion to defer to vote. Did councillors? Okay, so the vote is closed. It's carried. Yeah, we'll get Councillor Sudnick back in. Brenda, I don't know if anybody was getting a hold of Sergeant Moffat, but maybe we'll just do it after lunch. Or what do you think? Or is she on her way? Okay. What? Sorry? Okay. I was just thinking that allows. Yeah. Well, because then we got committee of the whole after, right? Are you suggesting, Blair, that I have Sergeant Moffat here before? I was just curious. We have 10-3 to deal with. I thought Yeah, no, I just wasn't sure if she was on her way or not. Can I table 10 point and amend the agenda? Okay. All right, I'm going to amend the agenda and move to 16 committee of the whole reports. Starting with 16.1 report from staff, Sergeant Moffat. Welcome, Sergeant Moffat, and welcome to Dawson Creek. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet everybody on council, but this is Sergeant Moffat, who is interim filling in until the replacement for Staff Sergeant Worrell is filled. So welcome, and I just need you to hit your button on your mic. Perfect.
Good morning, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to present just our update on our crime stats and developments within our detachment up to and including October 31st of 2022. As you're aware, Staff Sergeant Damon Worrell went on to the fabulous province of Manitoba, and I'm here temporarily until that position here is filled. And we're currently operating with 1 hard vacancy and 3 soft, which is 2 members on a maternity or paternity leave and 1 off-duty sick or injured. So we're just under on each watch, so we've balanced it out. And we are expecting a recruit here in December and then another one in January. So those members will be on the ground working with a full-time member under guidance and supervision for their 6 months, and then they'll be out on their own, which will add to our complement. Over the period of October 2022, there were a total of 8,065 calls for service. This is up from 7,515 calls for service when compared to the same time period in 2021, or an increase of approximately 7.3%. Of those, 6,443%, or 80% of the calls for service, were within the city of Dawson Creek, and 1,622, or 20% of the calls for service, were in the surrounding rural areas. Comparative to the last year for the same time period, this equates to an increase of calls for service within the city of 8.6% and 2.5% for calls for service in the rural area when compared to last year. So the following trends have been outlined for the period of January 1st to October 31st of 2022 pertaining to the calls for service and proactive investigations. Our theft of vehicles, there's been 140 calls for service, whereas there were 91 calls for service the same time last year. So we have an increase of 54%. Thefts from vehicles went from 118 up to 118, where we were sitting about 89 calls for service last year. So this is an increase of 33%. Break and enters to residences is down about 4% from 74 calls to 71 calls for service this year. Break and enter to business shows 145 calls for service, where last year this time was 61 calls for service. So this is showing an increase of 138%. On the other end, our assaults and personal crimes against people, assault with weapon, aggravated assaults were down 1% from 209 calls. And last year we were sitting at 212 calls this time. Sexual assaults are down as well. 39 calls for service last year, and this year we're at 37, so it's a decrease of 5%. Drug possession and drug trafficking. We were at 48 calls last year and 29 calls this year, which is a decrease of 40%. Impaired driving, alcohol and drug, 24-hour suspensions, immediate roadside prohibitions. 159 calls for service last year, and this year we're at 131, so this is another good decrease of 18%. Motor vehicle collisions, they're down about 2% from 294 to 287 calls. Theft, including shoplifting, last year about this time we were at 316 calls. This year we're at 449, which is an increase in 42%. Mental health as well. Last year we were at 313. This year we're at 470 calls, which is an increase at 50% in calls. Obviously, property crime has climbed over the last month and accounts for the majority of the calls for service, accounting for approximately 44% of the calls received. Persons crimes has dropped from previous, currently accounting for only 12% of calls received. So we're still sitting at our property crime and our mental health are our escalated calls for service. And we haven't really updated on our annual policy plan priorities, as that's usually done a little bit in the quarterly fashion for those stats to be reflected, but everything is on track with our priority planning. And yeah, so basically at that time, I just would like to say I'm happy to be filling in here right now. I look forward to working collectively and finding solutions and addressing any, there's obvious concerns in the communities in line with our local and provincial and national priorities. And that's the end of my report, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Moffat. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Sergeant Moffat. Welcome. I've got a few questions or lines of inquiry. The first, and I'm not sure the extent to which you've been read in on the various things. CAT, which was previously COATS, Community Opioid Action Team, prior to COVID shutting everything down, our local RCMP was active in engaging with those groups. Since COVID is kind of tapered off, I know there's been an effort to stand back up those programs, but I haven't received any update on that particular one, the community action team being reestablished. And I was just wondering if your detachment has had any outreach from them in order to.
Not to my knowledge, but I will definitely follow up on that.
Okay.
Councillor Earl, just before you continue, I have a little bit of information on that. I met with Northern Health on Friday, and they're in the process right now of restarting that.
Okay.
So they maybe just haven't reached out, but just for your knowledge.
In a similar vein, the Citizens on Patrol initiative, I know they were fairly robust with volunteers prior to COVID, and once again, following the end of that, they were struggling to, reestablish the initiative. What is the status of that, and what can we be doing to support that getting stood back up? Because I think the frustrations you mentioned earlier, that is a key component in helping us to address it.
Just an update this morning, the former chair of Citizens on Patrol, a meeting is happening Thursday night. That was the first time they could all get together. He already has what sounds like about 10 people that are volunteering and want to start this program up, which is, I think, amazing because it needs that core start. And we're going to also be reaching out to neighboring detachments like Prince George and Williams Lake that have very successful COP programs in place right now, just to see if we can get some of that expertise up and help get this organized and running.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick with my questions. I've got a few more. Mental health is your statistics indicate an increase of 50%. So when I came on council, I think one of the chief goals of your predecessor, Staff Sergeant Morrow, when he was fresh and new, was to collaborate with Northern Health and social services so that mental health calls were not monopolizing the time of the law enforcement as they had to wait with them. I'm sure you're aware of how that, the knock-along effects of the time requirements. And it seems like that has been trending once again in the wrong direction for a little bit. Are you seeing the appropriate support, or has there been any indication that is where are we? Is it worse than it was, and that's why that's reflected in these statistics, or did something go sideways? Or
no, I think just statistically, mental health is a huge problem right now. It's the lack of resources in every industry, drug and alcohol counselors, places for these people to go to get help, trying to access. It's systemic everywhere. And I know that I'm not familiar with what Staff Sergeant Merrill was like, how far he was in, but I'll definitely get into that. I've just kind of been trying to deal with some priorities. But I'm going to look into where they work. So I know like some cities, they have the mental health car, right, that's attending these calls with. But a lot of the problem is that we're the catch-all for most 911 calls. And majority of those are mental health related, where I don't know, like depending on what the situation is, if you're just sending a counselor there by themselves and you're dealing with a potentially volatile, violent person, right, we're going to be needed. So I can look into that and report back at the next meeting if that's okay. I'm just not sure what the status is.
And I don't expect you to, I understand you're new and I wouldn't expect you to have it. Just a couple areas of concern, certainly, in looking to, allow you guys to optimize your time, whether that's the best use, and your predecessor seemed to indicate in some instances, as you said, that wasn't. It would be better handled by a social worker. And then I guess one thing, we had a presentation earlier in the day from some passionate community members, and I think they expressed some frustrations around the state of policing and criminal justice and property crime in the community. And some of their frustrations, I think, stemmed from what they perceived to be a lack of information. So for the public, maybe doesn't and wouldn't need to appreciate the restrictions you guys operate under around privacy and what you're allowed to disclose to the public, and the old adage, justice must be seen to be done. If people aren't getting the information, their perception is nothing's happening or enough. So just if you had to direct, and I don't know if you'll have it available, but for somebody who was looking to bone up on what exactly you're allowed to disclose and what
Mhm.
not and what it is. Is there a resource you can direct them to so that they'd be better informed around that?
Yeah, so the Privacy Act is what we're governed by. You can look it up under our website. And I understand, like, we can't reveal statuses of investigations to anybody that is not part and parcel to that investigation. So a victim's going to get updates, suspects, depending on what the role is. If somebody is charged, like, we can't release names until a charge is laid under the Privacy Act. So anybody asking just for information on a file, if they're not involved in that file, we can't disclose because it's private, right? There are ways to access files, but it's through the Privacy Act to do information for access, and it's also on our website. But if you're requesting a file that you're not part and parcel to, they're going to vet that. So information is just not out there that shouldn't be to protect people's privacy. So unfortunately, like, I can't just disclose about investigations. I can let you know there's ongoing investigations and things of that nature, but I can't disclose, like, the people involved or anything for their privacy.
No, and I understand, but I do, as I was relaying it, I think that is part of the sense of frustration people have is they may be, you know, especially in a small town, everybody knows everybody, so you hear things through the grapevine, but they can't get any kind of official words. So no, I get that. I just wanted to highlight that for the public who've taken an interest.
Yeah.
And thank you, and once again, welcome. That's
Thank
the end
you.
of my time.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow.
Jane, you've come into a situation that's complex and very active. Citizens on Patrol. It's my impression that they weren't very active before COVID. I can remember a time when they were very active, but I just think that they had reached at a pretty low spot of activity. But not that that's material to today. But restarting the Citizens on Patrol, I'm pleased to hear about the meeting Thursday. In the meeting that I was at, one of the big challenges was, of course, information. So you are looking at Prince George and Williams Lake. But I think the big hurdle to getting it operational is to have someone do some scheduling. And I'm wondering if is there any way, well, when you do this research, it would be interesting to see if the RCMP plays, or the city plays, some support role in any way in that scheduling challenge, because that was identified as one of two big issues: scheduling and knowledge of protocols and the application of protocols, which are very, very necessary. And I'm hoping that those who are active in monitoring RCMP activities and movement in the community embrace and get under the umbrella of COP. So that's the other thing that I'm wondering about in the point of being proactive, and that there may be some downsides to it, is that there's an awful lot of precedent, court precedent, rulings, et cetera, that have really limited the power of the RCMP. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about being proactive and letting people know, because I also see a downside. You know, people say, well, what is it? What can't they do that they used to be able to do? But if that becomes public knowledge, it may create a bit of an added activity amongst the criminal group.
Absolutely. I think education is definitely, and the communication, and we can, we've been brainstorming on different ways that we can get that information across of what our role is and what our reach is. You know, like, we conduct the investigations, we collect the evidence, we present it to the judicial system, and it's out of our hands at that point. Yes, and absolutely, you hear a lot of frustrations, and I think a lot of it stems from not understanding our role and what we encompass. So I think getting those educational pieces out as well would be very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Parslow. Councillor McDonald?
Our delegation this morning suggested that they had what they felt was valuable information that they believed would help you in your investigations. Are there any existing tip lines or anything like that they can use to help present you with that information for you to sort out?
One-on-one would be best.
One-on-one would be best?
Would be best, yeah.
Yes.
That information coming to us, open and usable, is very helpful. There are things like Crime Stoppers that is up and running, and you can report online or over the phone, but there are certain, that kind of limits us as well, because we have to really scrutinize that information if we don't know the source and don't know. It really ties our hands a lot. Like, it's great to get that information, but the best way to give us usable information is to be a witness and give us that information and be willing to go to court to stand up to present that as well.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Earl?
I just wanted to, because I know there was, there's a lot of chatter in the community, but I did want to relay a compliment to your detachment with respect to an instance about a week ago where through my other role, I had to phone the RCMP and I wasn't on site where I phoned into, but they did reply back in about 5 minutes with a call to advise that this situation had been addressed. So for what it's worth, I know, as we say, nobody ever phones you when you're in government to tell you you're doing a good job, but that was a very good service. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks,
I'll pass it on.
Councillor Blair?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a quick question, Sergeant Moffat. At the beginning of your report, you stated that we have 3 soft vacancies and 1 hard vacancy, I think, presently.
Correct.
And then you indicated there was 2 recruits coming. Are they just being nice and giving us an extra officer, or is one a provincial replacement?
I think one is going to the province side, but I need to clarify that.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Thank you. That was it. Your
Okay,
Worship.
thank you, Blair. Thank you, councillors. And Sergeant Moffat, I had a couple questions as well. First, just wanted to thank you for your presentation. And, I appreciate you coming into this at difficult times, what we're dealing with. Just looking through your numbers when there's clearly like an increase in theft of, personal theft. And I know you guys have to prioritize like which ones you go to, like person crimes and that. So when you have like an increase, because those numbers are high, like when you go from 91 to 140, it's like not even the percentage is high, but those are high numbers. Yeah. So do you have like the resources here to help you with that? And B, if you don't, like if you get to a point like that it's changing so much like this where you don't have the resources, does the RCMP allow you to reach out to get other help, or how can you just explain like how that works?
Yeah, so there are provincially funded like district units and assistance from other detachments. So that's something that we are definitely, actually I'm going down to Prince George tomorrow, and we're going to be meeting over a lot of different options, just trying to get some solid things in. The biggest thing is the crime analysis to find out I know that the numbers are high on the business break, and I'm looking at that, I'm like, but this is also like storage lockers and like the remote gas sites and stuff, right? Yeah, because I'm like, wow, that's a huge number. So we're going to look at the crime stats and what the information tells us from the crime analyst to be able to direct resources to what we need to prioritize on. And then hopefully that'll be reflected in a decrease in a lot of this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then when Councillor McDonald just asked the question about if this group does have, I guess, or anybody in, the city has, things that they could help, or they feel that they could help with an investigation, maybe with the RCMP. And you said one-on-one is best. Is that like one-on-one with any RCMP officer, sir, or are they better to call and talk to, like different levels of the RCMP?
No, anybody with information can call, and it'll be signed to a member And then like if it's in regards to an investigation that's already ongoing, because our guys work shift work, right? So we don't want that information to wait. So if one member that's conducting that investigation is on days off, anybody else can take that information and add it to their investigation. It might be that he'll follow up with them when he returns to work, but we don't want that information sitting either. If it's something prioritized or something that like could be that piece that we need to connect things. So yeah, it could be anybody.
Okay. Thank you. And then I guess, I don't know if you can answer this, but I like just from that delegation we had this morning and, you know, I know some of their requests are that we need more RCMP officers or that the RCMP aren't doing, you know, their job. I don't expect you to answer that. I just want to know, like, you know, we're allocated 25 members. I think we're at about 22 right now with, you know, this soft and hard vacancies. So do you feel that there's a shortage of RCMP officers in Dawson Creek? Do you like?
I think there's a shortage everywhere,
Yeah.
right? It would be nice, absolutely, to have more members, right? Like, is it something that could come to fruition right away? Like, I don't know. Staffing right now with most police agencies across the board, it's just that recruiting piece right now too. So trying to get those members through but I would never say no to members,
Yeah.
ever.
Because if we're at 22 or 25, I think the Canadian average for RCMP fulfillment rate is like a lot lower than that. It's closer to 70%, I believe.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's concerning that we're that close and, you know, and the spike in crime. So it's like, how do we get that?
Dawson's a busy place, right? And you, like, comparable to Fort St. John and the areas, like, the members, yeah, like, more members would always be a bonus, a compliment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Earl.
Question, sorry, Your Worship. Thank you. And just wanted an update on the status of the bait car program. I know it was out of commission for a little bit, and I wanted to know where we are with
Yeah,
that and if we
and
can
I'm
expect
on
it to be
that.
back up and running.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it has been out of commission. We're pushing, they're gonna be sending us up a new one. And then taking this one out. And so I'm hoping that'll be in the very near future.
When it goes down, is it a matter of, I assume, just some sort of malfunction? And it's not something that can be fixed locally? You need to send it out and bring something new in?
That's correct. Just the
Okay.
computer equipment, right? It's not
Yeah.
able to be.
Okay.
dealt with
Yeah,
by the-
I mean,
just-
I don't know what prevents it, but
Mhm.
it just, you
If
know.
it was something
When you
mechanical.
see, when you see the spike in theft of vehicle and you see through social media, you know, that seems to capture a lot of public attention.
Mhm.
You want to make sure you're turning over every rock to
Absolutely.
try and address it. And when it's months on end where it's going, it just, you know,
Yeah, and
needless
that was
frustration. So
a concern of mine when I'm like, how long has this been sitting vacant? Like, so let's get that rolling. So yeah, it's in motion to get a replacement up here right away.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, just one last comment. This is a new council. We haven't had chance yet to set our priorities and so on. But one of the gaps, I watch a lot of British crime movies and stuff, but one of the big gaps, it seems, here in our community is surveillance cameras. Some business people have attempted to put to have security cameras for their premises. They are unable to put those cameras on BC Hydro poles. But they're saying, well, what about the city? Could we put them on some lamp posts? I'm just, when council gets round to setting some priorities, one of the topics I'm hoping that we'll discuss is perhaps funding over a number of years, but having whatever surveillance cameras we're allowed to have.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be for traffic, where we have accident areas, and we have some identified. So what's your view about the possible limitations that we must address if we're going to be able to put up surveillance cameras or facilitate their placement by private businesses?
My experience, like Kelowna did the cameras downtown in their high problem areas. There was pushback, obviously, because people are concerned, but pretty much we're on camera 24/7 anyways, whether we're aware of it or not, right? And I do believe they did see a decrease in problems in the downtown area. But I would have to, I'm not very educated on what the laws are surrounding that. Like I
No,
can
that's
look
fair
into
enough.
that, but, so I would hate to answer, but, I think when people are aware they're being filmed, it changes behavior, right? And as long as they're in useful places, like so many businesses have the great surveillance systems, but it's like the top of the head walking in, right? It's like, so as long as they're like in the good position, so we
Yeah.
can make those IDs without a doubt in court where the judge can see, yes, this is the same person. So just really optimizing the viewpoints that these, because yeah, some equipment's amazing, and then some of it's very hard, right? Very grainy. It's like you're saving all this information when it's not usable. But yeah, I definitely think cameras deter.
Yes, as I say, just maybe to the rest of council, some business people were talking about that at a meeting that the mayor and I were at. Maybe you had just left, I'm not sure, it doesn't matter really, but they said that they've tried to put cameras to monitor their property, and BC Hydro wouldn't let them use their poles. But was there a way of attaching their cameras to city lamps where we have them? Anyway, that's,
Yeah.
and so that's their own initiative, nothing to do with us, but could we facilitate it perhaps?
Thanks, Councillor Parslow. Councillor Sudnick.
I just want to speak to the camera comment. Cameras will keep honest people honest. Myself as a business owner with 11 cameras, just confirm that the people that want to commit a crime are still committing a crime, because there doesn't seem to be any consequence or any level of accountability when it comes to it. So I can provide my camera footage and it's like, yep, we know that gentleman, we've arrested him 7 times or 8, 9 or 10 or 11 times, and there doesn't seem to be a consequence regardless of how many cameras I have or other businesses have. And where I'm located, there's an awful lot of cameras in my area. And it's just a huge expense that doesn't really give any results or any consequence to those that want to commit a crime, because they're just going to do it again.
Yeah,
So
and
it
I
keeps
think,
honest people honest.
It does, but it also gives us a tool, right, to identify. And I hear what you're saying on the other end. Like I said, we can only do our job and do it as best as we can, collecting the evidence and bringing it forward, and then it's unfortunately out of our hands at that point. But I completely hear what you're saying. But I do also think it does deter certain behaviors as well, knowing that this evidence is now here, right? But there are the people that, regardless of what the circumstances, they don't care.
No, they don't care. And even if they decided that they wanted to for that brief amount of time, it would just move the crime to a place where now they know that there is no camera. So they'll just keep moving it around. It's going to keep moving around our city until what point? Until, again, these people that are affected by crime see that there is a consequence to those that are committing the crimes. So there doesn't seem to be, for myself, it's like, well, lock your car, lock your doors, lock your this, secure your goods. But there doesn't seem to be any message to let's not be a criminal, right? Because there is no consequence. So there's not much you can do, right? Or is being done.
Well, that's kind of out of my wheelhouse. Like we run the investigation, we collect the evidence, and if something's there that we can prove this offense took place and put it on that person, that's when it gets into the justice system, right? So we can only do what we can do as boots on the ground, and then it leaves our wheelhouse to the next stage. But I think, sorry, you said something there that I was trying to. Oh, I've lost.
Well, I'll comment then. So when you've reached the limits of what you can do with your boots on the ground and the information that you can receive, and so now this level of frustration with people that are providing you with this information, not getting results and not seeing consequences, have now taken it a different direction in the community, which is creating an entire different situation that we will have to deal with, you will have to deal with. And so how far do we let the escalation continue before something good happens, before something worse happens?
And like I said, like, I hear what you're saying. We can only forward charges, right? We don't lay them, we don't do anything that's out of our house. We need the evidence to be able to go forward, and we have to work within the law and our policies. We can't do certain things because then it's breaching people's charters of rights. There's so many things that and this is the education piece, like, we can't just bust in a door to get stuff because we know stuff is in there. We need the lawful judicial authorizations to do that. And I get it's frustrating, but we must work within the law. That's what we uphold. That's what we must work within. Things that we're looking at, like I've spoken about, is the crime analyst that is doing the mapping and the targeting, and this should be with us in the next week or two because it's a lot of information that they're going through to try and give us it gives us a lot of information that they can decipher and look at what targets we should be focusing on, and all this information that will be very useful for directing resources, because right now it's a chase, right? We don't know where, people are displaced, they're going. So it is happening. It's just, we need the information. We need it timely. We need it so we can effectively do the best we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sudnick. Councillor Kempf?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for this report. I just have a question, and I noticed, the stats in here. If people aren't calling in crime, you hear that, I don't call it in, nothing's going to happen will this affect, so calls that aren't coming in, this will affect your stats here, correct?
Well, this is like files open, so it would be the calls we've received or our proactiveness, depending. So these are actual reported. But people that aren't calling in skews our data analysis, right, of where crimes are happening, but we're not aware of because they haven't been reported. So maybe we're focusing our attention somewhere where it shouldn't be because we're getting the calls there, but actually things are happening here and people aren't calling because they're like, oh, nothing's going to happen, right? So it helps us steer where our resources should be.
Definitely. So your recommendation, call it in, call it in, call it in. I keep
100%.
saying that. Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Councillor Apollonio?
Hi, Sergeant Papa. Welcome to Dawson Creek. I just want to ask, how's the morale of the RCMP or the police right now? Are they okay, or because I know, like this morning, there's a delegation, of course, and of course they have their point, and of course the RCMP's point. So I just want to ask, how's the morale? Like, are there staff or not, or the?
No, I think internally it's, to me, walking in, this is my 4th week there, morale seems really, really good. Members, we all have frustrations, right? Like, we get frustrated like the public does because we do our job sometimes and we're just as disappointed, but it doesn't mean we stop doing it. And, I think most members, their hearts are, we join for service and we want excellence, but the membership working together, the staff there, everything seems good. We do have bad days, but everything seems really good.
Thank you. I just had one more question, Sergeant Moffat. I know that when you guys deal with calls that come in, there's priority levels of calls. So persons crime is number 1, right? Anything person related. So we're saying that that's down, but is it actually down, or is it just that property crime has went up so much that the percentage is down? So does that make sense? Because you're still dealing with those person crimes as a top priority, but at what point, or can you even with the criminal code, can you change your priority? Or can we give you direction to change your priority to, if property crime is at 44%, to me, that's a concern.
No, it absolutely is a concern. We can't change our priority, but if those persons' offenses aren't coming in, then we are dealing, it's not like we're not dealing with the calls coming in, right? But say if we have a report of a stolen vehicle in process, and then we have a report of an assault causing bodily harm, and obviously we're going to have to go to this one first and then manage, so the prioritizing there. But yeah, if these offenses are down, the person's crime, so we're having more resources open to respond to these other ones, but they're also prioritized in progress, because that can turn to a person's offense right away, right? But like we have them prioritized 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 4 might be the cabin was broken into sometime between October and December. Okay, like there's not going to be anything there for, of recency that we can investigate if it was months ago and they came there after, right? So they're all prioritized, but yeah, if we're not responding to all the personal offenses that we still have, but they're obviously declining, which is nice to see. So our priorities are going to the property offenses.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other questions, yeah, it's good. Thank you for coming in,
you
Sergeant
very
Moffat,
much for
and
your
your
time.
presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lunch here. I'm going to call it recess for lunch, so we'll come back at 12:35-ish. Yep, 12:35-ish. Delegation from South Peace Health Service Societies. Yes. So if you get your exercise. We want to make sure you're hitting your steps today. Yeah. All right, so back to 10.2, under the mayor's business, the delegation from the South Peace Health Society. We had the motion on the floor to defer, and Blair has reached out to Mr. Bumstead, so I'll go to you for the update, and yeah.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. I had the opportunity to reach out and have a discussion with Mr. Bumstead on his request that the city reconsider and take on the funding of the utilities. The questions I'd asked is, we had discussed the work that they had done. Had they gone to any other community groups? Had they discussed this with any opportunities for grant funding and so on? No, they hadn't. His response was, for every dollar they raise, regardless of who it's from, it goes into the work they're doing on behalf of the society to help recruit and retain healthcare professionals as far as that goes. So should they reach out and raise $5,000, we're using $5,000, that's a round number, and raise that, they could contribute it to the utilities. It would take away, in his words, from anything else they did. So not a lot more information than was shared, but he made it clear that for every dollar that they have, they put back into the community. They're upgrading the home. They're doing a number of things that we've talked about. I believe it was mentioned here before. They will look after the grounds. They will look after the snow. They will look after the house itself. But not a lot more I can add. As far as the utilities, he indicated certainly if they had to, they would go raise that money, but it would take away from any other opportunities that they would see to help recruit and retain healthcare professionals. That's it in a nutshell, the information I can bring back and share with you.
Okay. And their main focus as a South Peace Health Society is to retain and for staff retention, right?
I believe it is, but it's even broader than that. I think when you look at Boltre's house, that's not about recruitment and retention. That's about a service for people needing to utilize our health system. So, and very well thought out. I mean, there are people that come from other areas, primarily if it was for the birth of their child. Some are here for up to 30 days before, based on, whatever challenges that they may face. So it would be utilized for that. But again, not a lot more information I was able to share with the update I just provided.
Okay. Thank you, Blair. I will, open it up for any discussion. We've had quite a bit. And Councillor McDonald?
So for me, I think we're getting back to the same thing where, as presented by Councillor Earl, if we take this on, it's going to be ours forever. And I would rather see the province take this on, Northern Health take this on, anybody but us. If there are other community leases from the city that we do offer up to 15% of utilities that we will subsidize. I would support that, but us supporting all their utilities, I struggle with. We are on a very tight budget. This community will support that. I think it's an avenue I'd rather see them go down before the city.
Thank you. And then just to clarify, Councillor McDonald, the motion on the floor is that we've asked them to look after the full responsibility. So if this was declined, it's not saying that we will, then we would look at another motion. So yeah, just to clarify. So if there's no other discussion though, we've had a lot of dialogue around this, so I think I'm gonna call the motion. So is there any other? No. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to repeat the motion. So the motion that was requested to reconsider was that the utility costs for the city-owned property located at 1608 106th Avenue be the responsibility of the South Peace Health Society. So we are voting on.
Sorry.
Yes.
And,
just one sec. Councillor McDonald?
A vote in the affirmative is for them to continue to pay their utilities.
Yes.
Okay.
And opposed would mean that we would be looking for a new motion, or staff would be looking for a new motion for direction, correct? Or?
I believe there's two things there. A vote in the affirmative would mean that they would be responsible for their utility costs.
Yeah.
A vote against would mean that the city would be back taking those on, correct?
If you vote in opposition to this motion, just defeats the motion. There would be another motion required to deal with the request.
Okay.
Affirmative. I think that just so that we're clear, and I want to make sure that, for both sides here, both the elected and administrative, we have a motion that has been put back on the floor for reconsideration. If the affirmative vote carries this, then we are not, the city is not on the hook for the utilities. We have said to the South Peace Society, they would pay the utilities. And then at that point, if there was a further motion, that would be separate from what we're dealing with here. Is that, I think I'm clear on that.
And if defeated, then we would need another motion to deal with the request, right?
And is that a motion that can be made immediately then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to call, is everybody clear before I call? Okay. I'm going to, for the reconsideration of this motion, I'm going to call to vote. I'm going to call the vote. Do we have to pull Councillor Sudnick's card? Oh, you did? Okay.
Councillor Barzil's got it.
Well, I'm not trying to be, you just said a vote to reconsider.
No, the motion that I've called to reconsider, I'm calling to vote.
That makes sense.
On the main motion, yes. I clarify? Councillor Parslow? Okay, all votes are in, the vote is closed. It's carried. All right, get Councillor Sudnick. All right, now we're going to go to the next on the agenda is 10.3, the delegation from the Citizens Take Action. So there was a lot of asks here. I don't, I think we'll look to council, or I'll look to council on where we go with this if we refer it to staff. But, a couple things that I wanted to comment on a little bit. One, thanking them for coming in and presenting to us. Just a little bit on their first ask, would Mayor and Council consider writing on behalf of the citizens of Dawson Creek to our local MLA and MLA Michael Farnworth. I have had a lot of dialogue with a lot of different officials, including MLA Bernier. We haven't went to MLA Farnworth yet. But I have had discussion with Commander Brown, who is the northern representative for all of our CMPs. So he would be like the head person for BC, northern BC. And he understands, where the city's at, the concerns, and there is a meeting that's going to be held in the near future in regards to that. The other part about their lack of manpower, we've set it at 25 members. We're about 22. We're pretty close to being, full, manpower of what, the requirement is for our city. Would the city request a formal audit? I think we need to look into some of this and the information that's out that we have. Would we want to, host a community meeting? I think there's a lot of information here, a lot of good stuff that I think we have to, personally look at all of it and see where we're at. It might be tough to make a decision on some today, but I'm going to leave to council for some discussion right now. Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a couple thoughts. I don't know that we should make any declarations which preempt your efforts to deal with this with other stakeholders. As far as hosting a community meeting, what I'd be interested in is hosting, if we're going to be a public meeting, a information session with Citizens on Patrol and RCMP for those looking to volunteer and who are serious about volunteering and are looking to get some more information around that. I think that would be of value because that is, for those concerned about this and looking to take an active role in helping, that is the legal avenue for doing so. And I think that would hopefully yield something. I would also, I know, and I'd lean on maybe some insights from Councillor Parslow, who at UBCM, I believe you were in attendance at the police session, because I know this is a fluid subject. We've had some movement very recently within the last couple of days at the provincial level about what they intend to do on a number of fronts. Similarly, there were some recommendations that came out of the police committee that included community advisory panels, that included, I think somebody did even float the idea of a provincial police force. So, so some of the ideas in here have been expressed at other levels of government and may ultimately come to fruition. But as far as of the asks, certainly I think hosting a Citizens on Patrol RCMP information session would be of value. And I'll maybe ask Councillor Parslow to give some more insight into what he was privy to in the meetings he attended.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Councillor Parslow.
That's akin to asking Blair a loaded question without warning him. All I can say is, yes, it was a long session. There's a police act coming, a new police act, which will see a tiered hierarchy of policing authorities, starting from city bylaw officers right up to the police force in a particular area, the integration for some things of conservation officers, firefighters, you name it. It's a far ranging revision to policing in the province. The committee recommended having a provincial police force, but the UBCM rejected that and said, because the costs for most of the communities who have RCMP is much less than it would be for municipal, because the federal government supports it. So that was the one thing, but it is far reaching. So yeah, I think, I don't know what more to say about it. It's a real paradigm shift around policing, right? And it's not replacing the RCMP, but it's enabling the RCMP to do its prime job. But if the law of the land does not change, we're not going to move forward. So I think the pressure from cities should be really dealing with at the political level something to stop this revolving door, okay, of criminals just getting, and then adding to that the fact that they're not paying their fines, seemingly. That is the focus to me. But this letter, just my comments on that is we should respond, first of all. And I think some of the things are obviously not our purview. I think outlining what you've done, Mayor, and continuing to do would be an important part of that. I believe this letter that we got went to Chief Superintendent Brown, did it not?
Yes, and then just to clarify the letter you're talking about, are you talking about the letter of their questions
Yes,
or the
that's-
actual letter they presented this morning?
Sorry, the actual thing they presented this morning.
Okay, that wasn't even made out to council or mayor. It was just to three or four different levels of the RCMP.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would mean much of a response from us because it's not even addressed to us. So are
So
you
our response would be this to this.
to their questions? Is that correct, Blair? That would be there?
Pardon me, I'm sorry, Your Worship.
No, just like our response would be to their ask to us because
Yes.
their letter was to RCMP, not to us.
Exactly, we were CC'd on that letter, so we traditionally don't respond to a
No.
carbon copy letter to us. But
Fine.
the asks I would suggest would be appropriate for yourselves to respond to, each of the bullet points.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to go through these individually or if we want to refer them to staff to bring back like, what we could do with it or, I don't know.
Your Worship, if I could, I mean, there's a couple of direct asks. First of all, if mayor and council feel we need more police officers, you would have to state that. They're asking clearly here and understaffed. They talk about the lack of, we have never had more officers on the ground than we have today. So I'm going to suggest that more officers isn't the answer, as much as they would like it. There seems to be some disconnect there. We ran, I believe, last year and the year before 16.7, 17.8 officers. We now have 21, I believe, on the ground today, which is more than we've had. So people keep referring to the understaffed. That's a question. That's a political question for yourselves. If you want more RCMP officers, we begin by putting them in our budget and then beginning a process for them to recruit. The other question that's pretty significant that jumps out, would council consider reallocating budget money from our heavily funded fire department to aid in our suffering RCMP? The choices of words, it's unfortunate, they haven't done some of their homework based on the amount of staffing levels we have with police in town. But again, that's a political question. I'm not sure what I could bring back from administrative side other than to say, if you cut one firefighter, it's this. If you cut four, it's this. You could save it. Does that mean you move that money over to RCMP? Again, that's a political discussion you have via budget talks or how you would like to. So there's just a wide range of questions here, but I would concur. I think they've left a list of questions. There should be answers forthcoming. It's just a matter, I think you're going to have some tough answers. I mean, if you write back and say, we're not going to change our fire department, we're going to keep our policing level, that's going to be a tough answer for them to hear. But again, that's a discussion you will have to land on somewhere.
Thank you, Blair. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. And to Blair's point, yeah, there's a lot of directions we could take this, but I think the first bullet point, asking for further communications, you've covered off with your efforts, and we can detail an effort. Would the city request a formal audit? I don't know, given that we've got, I don't imagine it would be taken terribly seriously, but given that we've got a new staff sergeant who's got a month tenure under their belt, I'm not sure what the operational benefit of that would be. I've spoken to what I think would be the best way forward as far as public meeting goes. Reallocate budget money. So we already allocate for 25 full-time positions, and we've never had those positions full time. I mean, other than a brief instance or two over the last 4 years in my experience. So allocating more budget money for positions that might not be fillable, I don't know. But in addition to that, in addition to our 25, we also get 6 regional. And as the previous staff sergeant indicated, they are based out of here in Dawson Creek, and they do have the operational discretion to pull and reallocate those people as needed. I don't imagine us, that it goes back to you're playing with the trains. As a governing board, we're not going to be able to tell the police specifically how to staff or where to. We can, we get input on their strategic priorities, and we can, question and inquire during our updates, but telling a detachment commander where to allocate I don't think we're going to be able to provide the satisfaction they're looking for there. And similarly, municipal provincial police force, not something, Surrey, I think, just tried to go through that same thing where they went from RCMP to Surrey Police, and they're in the midst, underneath a new mayor, of switching back. It's not, number one, logistically, it's a lot more expensive. Number two, as a border community, we rely on collaboration between different jurisdictions of RCMP, given the amount of cross-border crime. And I don't know that a local police force, in addition to being exorbitantly expensive, would necessarily aid us in that endeavor. Having said that, I would refer back to the commission Councillor Parslow was highlighting in the recommendations they gave. Never say never, but I don't think as a municipality, and as a municipality of 13,000 people, that would realistically be within our means to provide. And I appreciate some of the thoughts I'm throwing out there might not be well received, but I think public meeting and Mayor Dober, with the support of Councillor, continuing to collaborate and apply political pressure are probably where we can best put our time, in addition to making sure we're engaged with the various community organizations like CAT, like COPS, like Rural Crime Watch, things like that. So those are my thoughts, but I'm happy for anybody else's.
Thank you, Councillor Earl. Anybody else? So, I think, I appreciate it, what we've heard so far. I believe that we should refer this to staff. I know I just know that there's some information that with new council here that would be valuable for them to know, like for us to make decisions. For example, on municipal and provincial police force, we've done some work on that, and there's some struggles with, the smaller communities around here wanting to get on board with that. And multiple areas in here, plus some meetings that we're having. So I don't know if, I can recommend somebody put a motion forward to refer this to staff. I know, Blair, some of it would be difficult for you to answer because it needs to be a direct, direction from us, but maybe just on the ones you can provide information, and maybe you can provide that all right now, but I'll let you.
Your Worship, so I do know, going back many, many years, there has been work taken on in the region to look at a regional policing initiative. And again, it does come down to, there are 2 communities that fund policing today in this region. One being Fort St. John at 90% because they are over 15,000. The other being Dawson Creek. We fund 70% of our 25 municipal officers because we're under 15,000. The rural contribution comes through a tax levy on their bill, and under 5,000 people, communities, which is most of ours, other than the 2 I've mentioned, pay, I'll suggest, very little towards policing. So to go and ask people to say, we think a regional policing model is the way to go, we think it, and it may very well be, but you're going to have to now contribute dollars. It's been quite clear over the 30 years I've been involved in both municipal and provincial politics, there's no willingness for somebody to say, although I get the service today, I now want to start paying for it. So I'm just not sure that's a realistic I guess, approach again. That would be one that I'm aware of. You never say never, but my experience in it has been that there has just been no significant appetite for that type of model. The municipal policing model I can speak to. So you immediately lose the 30%. You no longer fund 70% of your police force. You fund 100%. They still adhere to the same laws. We had originally in the late 90s did a very small amount of work on this because there was some concerns raised at the time. Probably financially, it doesn't make a great deal of sense for our city to look at a municipal police force. But again, that would take a far greater study than I would be capable of, or any administrative staff here. That would be one you would have somebody come in and do. The issue of a provincial police force probably carries more merit in my mind than any of the others. But again, that's not our decision. That is a provincial government decision as to how they would like to go. But again, you would lose any amount of contribution from the federal government on that. So I can bring back more in depth, but I don't know if it'll mean a lot different than what I'm trying to portray here based on those three models. The other ones, Your Worship, I really would need you to, if you're looking for information that, there's an ask here on the fire department, a pretty straightforward ask. If it's the wish of yourselves to reduce that budget and put that budget to RCMP, we can do a report based on what that would look like. But to go do all of that work and put it together before being asked by council, I don't think would be a wise use of administrative time, because we wouldn't know where you stand as a board on that. I'll try and answer any questions I can on this, but you're dealing with a hugely political decision issue here versus an administrative decision.
So should we go through all 5 of these asks right now and give you some, if we want to refer some to staff so that you got a clear vision?
Certainly, we will do whatever you ask of us. I can guarantee that without question. We have an incredible team. I could look at the first one. Would you consider writing to Mayor or MLA Bernier and Minister Farnworth? I mean, I think that's a decision, yes or no. I mean, in my mind, you're working. I know that you've done a great deal of work already with our staff sergeant. You've gone up the chain and spoken to the commanding officer in Prince George. Does it mean you say, hey, we were willing to write a letter to our MLA and to the minister responsible for public safety? Again, that would be a decision that if you directed us, we'll make sure that happens.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just go through, I guess, like if we go to deal with the first one first, their ask, is one to write a letter to them, but it's about regarding the RCMP's lack of manpower and the inability to deal with our municipal crime problems in a sufficient manner. So we don't, by the numbers, we don't have a lack of manpower. So if we are writing a letter, it's just based on what their information is here. So, I guess let's just go through one at a time. And so I'm going to put it to council on.
Okay. If I could suggest a response to that, to the group that's asked the question would be, thank you. The answer to your question is, we don't believe we have a lack of manpower. Here's how we're staffed and this and that. So a letter stating that wouldn't be appropriate. I mean, that's in the generality of that first ask.
Yeah. Okay. So would somebody like to, Councillor Parslow.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was still on.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay,
So
Councillor.
you're proceeding through each of these things.
I think each, and just look for direction from council. Councillor McDonald.
Okay, so based on that first ask alone, I agree with what our CAO was saying, right? We relay the information that we are receiving on a monthly basis from our staff sergeant that we have been fully staffed to our greatest desire, not our greatest desire, sorry, but to what we budgeted for as far as staffing goes, and how we reflect on the provincial average or community average to our size, right? And that there is no need for that letter to move forward to an MLA.
Blair?
Just a point of clarity. We have not been fully staffed in that we have had more staff on the ground recently than we've had in a number of years is how I would, I can't remember a time when we've had 25 municipally funded officers on the ground in Dawson Creek.
Yeah.
So that's it. Just
Sorry.
for that.
Yes, I misspoke.
All right.
Yeah.
Councillor, what was that all you
Yeah.
had on that? Okay. Councillor Earl?
I'd also note that, to the best of my knowledge and based on conversations, the MLA is aware of the situation. It's you know, maybe not the specific letter, what have you, but as far as concerns about crime, frustrations around policing, criminal justice enforcement, you know, he's not naive in that regard. So I'm not sure whether us reaching out to him, you know, if that's also something we should register, but also maybe provide his contact information in that response.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Sudnick?
So on this first one, a letter regarding lack of manpower. Manpower doesn't seem to be, we seem to have that covered. But the question of the inability to deal with municipal crime in a sufficient manner, who determines that? Is that us? Is that the RCMP? Maybe we should have some clarification from Staff Sergeant as to what is considered a sufficient manner and what is acceptable, because what's acceptable to me or this council or the community, everyone has different expectations. So before we can comment on it, or I can comment on it, what is it actually supposed to be? What are their policies for consideration of a sufficient manner? Because I can call, and is it insufficient if I call in an emergency and it takes a half an hour or 5 minutes? So what's reasonable? We're commenting on an unknown. So can we get some clarification from Staff Sergeant on that as what their policy is for acceptable or reasonable manner?
Yeah, I think I'll maybe put that through to Blair, but yeah, I agree. Like it's, you know, there's so many variables on that, right? So.
Yeah, we could do that. I believe I heard her say her responsibility is to uphold the laws of the land and the charter rights. That's their job. They do it and then refer it. But if they have a standard set, we would have to ask them. But the standard, as my experience has shown me in the past, is that it is exactly as the sergeant had said this morning. Here's the laws. We take an oath to uphold these laws. We administer them and pass them on when we've done our investigation. And then the frustration, obviously, that most people see comes from our judicial system, where the person is back out before the RCMP are finished doing the paperwork. So I'm just not sure what to ask her, to be honest.
Did you have more, Councillor Sudnick? Okay. Councillor Earl?
Yeah, I mean, are we asking for the RCMP to give us what their performance metrics are? As far, like, once again, I don't, I'm sure, you know, everybody in a professional setting usually has some sort of performance metric they rely on to, you know, service standards, what have you, but I'm not sure. I mean, it might be nice to have an overview of it, but we do. Once again, there's a wall of separation between us and playing with the trains. So I'm not sure, like, in the question, I mean, obviously there is an element of subjectivity to this, as Councillor Sudnick has described. But if we're asking for the RCMP to comment on somebody else's interpretation on what isn't sufficient based on their understanding, I don't know if that's a fair question to pose to them. I'm just not sure what we're asking for in that respect.
Thank you. Councillor Apollonio?
Okay. I think it won't hurt if we will send a letter to the MLA, I think, because it's only like a concern from the citizens, so maybe it's just only a letter. So maybe I know he's aware of what's happening in Dawson Creek, but maybe a formal letter would be like sufficient enough. Just of course, it's coming from the citizen or Dawson Creek. At least it's like formal. Second is I agree to the Councilor Earl, we are, as you said, we are not totally understaffed. Maybe the performance matrix should be reviewed, I think, because we don't know what's happening in the RCMP or how they carry over their job or responsibility for the safety or the policing here in Dawson Creek. And thirdly, I will speak about the third one. I will gather my thought. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow.
With all due respect to what's been going on and people's sentiments, I think this is not a good way of dealing with this matter. I would like to suggest that we ask our CAO, in collaboration with the mayor, draft a letter of response. And we could, if you wanted, give council a couple of days to review it by email and give some feedback. I really do appreciate the sentiment of trying to get everybody's input, but boy, as was suggested by Councillor Sudnick, you've got so many nebulous things in here, like sufficiency. That's just a bunny hole. I mean, what is sufficient in the town of Hope when they have no officer on duty from 2 a.m. till 6 a.m, okay, will be different than Dawson Creek, where we have somebody on duty all the time. So I'm saying we can go down so many bunny holes. It's such an inefficient way of using our time. I think a letter should be sent. It should be couched with sufficient nebulous statements, because we don't know. We could get sucked into a whole bunch of other correspondence and correspondence back, where the mayor and yourself, Blair, have sense there's no way we would recommend going in that area, such as an audit, right? Or moving funds from the firefighters, whose contract basically restricts a lot of what we can and can't do, as these are no-go areas, and just be clear about it. But I don't think we should try to draft the main themes of the letter like this. I think two of you working collaboratively together will, I bet you, nail it 95%.
So are you suggesting that Blair and myself work on a letter to respond, like a letter to MLA Bernier and Farnworth, or a letter to this organization with all this? Okay. So do we need a motion for something? Yes. So would you like to make a motion, Councillor Parslow?
Yes, through your worship, I would suggest that it be included in the motion if this letter would need to come back to council for approval of all of council before it is sent.
Okay. Councillor Parslow?
So I would move that the CAO and mayor draft a letter in response to these asks and present the letter at an in-camera meeting. December, whatever the first meeting is in December, for review by council.
December 5th is the not date.
I would look for clarity. I'm not sure this could go in camera. We're responding to a
Okay,
public
fine.
request is all.
Okay. I withdraw the in-camera.
Okay, so a letter from, so just to clarify, a motion that CAO Blair and myself, the mayor, draft a letter in response to Jason, Ty, and Doug's presentation on November 21st.
Not the presentation. Because they
Oh, yeah,
presented
sorry,
the whole
on
letter. These
their asks
Yes.
from the Citizens Take Action Group.
Could I point just one thing, then I'll throw this out for your consideration. So we will do that, and I'm sure we can accomplish that in the next couple of days. Would it be appropriate that we got that information to you sooner rather than wait 14 plus days to respond to this group? It seems like it's a fairly significant issue in our community. It was a significant presentation today. I think taking it and waiting 14 days before we answer the questions they've asked might be a challenge. is what I'm suggesting. I think a quicker response might be in order.
I was
Do you
kind of
want
a-
special meeting.
I was kind of going to agree to that and maybe mention that if we got a second, but maybe it's, once we get that letter drafted in a couple days, we could send it out for email review and allow a couple days. I don't know how that would work, Brenda, or what's,
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recommendation would be to have the letter drafted. We would respond directly right away to the group, indicating that council is considering their requests and that we would get back to them once all of council has decided on a response. For it to come back in 2 weeks, we would give them the timeline as to when to expect a response.
yeah, and I think I just kind of agree with Blair that in, the nature of their asks and what's going on in the community, I don't agree with waiting 2 weeks to respond. Like, I think, maybe if we can't answer some of it, we could, I think there needs to be something that goes out sooner, like Blair said. So I don't know if that needs to be part of the motion or how would,
Through your worship, it's just difficult responding on behalf of all of council when all of council hasn't made that resolution. That's the point I'm trying to
no,
make.
I think we're thinking like we would write the letter to get back to council. We wouldn't respond without them seeing the letter and getting input from council, is what I'm understanding, Blair.
Correct. That's my understanding of what we are being asked to do, is you and I would sit down, go through the questions, draft a response that we think is appropriate on behalf of mayor and council. You would then share that with your council
Yeah.
immediately. And if there was any concerns, the council would let you know. And if there wasn't, then that would go out. You would most likely want to reaffirm that at the next meeting of council in December. But we have done it before. Phone polls are, as Brenda has pointed out, somewhat different way to do business, but there are on occasion. Or you could call an emergency meeting, and if people couldn't make it to here, you could do it via phone under the new laws of the land. So.
Yeah, well, let's clarify what the motion is because I'm confused now. So Councillor, or Brenda or Councillor
I'm looking
Parslow?
at Brenda, she's got to note what I said.
Okay,
Oh, you have? Jolly good.
Okay,
Bear
Jill?
with me. I hope that this is in the line of what you had intended. That council authorized the chief administrative officer and mayor to draft a letter in response to the requests received from the Citizens Take Action group at the council meeting held on November 21st, 2022, and circulate the letter to council for their review and approval prior to the letter being sent.
could I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Sudnick. Beautiful, thank you, Joe. Any discussion? Okay, I am going to call the motion to vote.
I will get that to you.
And everybody knows what they're voting on, correct? Okay, all right.
All votes are in.
All votes, the vote is closed. It's carried. Next order of business, we have 11 Chief Administrative Officer operational updates.
Nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Blair. 12, the diary. Anything in the diary? Nothing in the diary? No? Okay. 13, consent calendar. Get a motion. Councillor Kemp, second. Sorry, Councillor Parzo, did you want to speak to this?
Well, no, you've got a motion. Someone
Okay,
can second
Councillor
that.
McDonald, second.
Can I speak to it?
Yeah. Councillor Parslow.
Just a comment. The email from William Wallace, collection of outstanding criminal code fines. I'm wondering, so by this being in consent calendar, that no action, specific action, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that as it relates to this, because I think that letter is so illustrative of the pathetic legal system we have that we should discuss that and take some action over it.
Brenda, let's look for
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We can lift that item from the consent calendar, so we would remove that item from the motion to receive for information.
Okay, so we need an amendment from Councillor Parslow?
We can just receive, yes, we can just receive the items number 1 and number 2 on the consent calendar.
Okay,
That'll be the motion.
okay, so the motion will be to receive items 1 and 2. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Earl. So all in favor? Or I would call a vote on that? So I will call the vote. Vote is closed. That's carried. So Brenda, will need a little clarification on what I do now, please.
So at this point, that one letter is just the next item to be dealt with
Okay.
in the meeting.
Okay, so our next order of business is under 13.1 would be number 3, the email from William Wallace on November 3rd, 2022, reason collection of outstanding criminal code fines. Councillor Parslow.
Prior to making a motion, can I say something?
Asking for information for a motion? Yes.
Well, maybe I want to have a discussion.
Yes.
This letter warrants some thoughtful response from council, because if this is ever a matter that illustrates the failure of our criminal justice system, I can't think of anything that's more powerful. Can you imagine being a police officer in this town, knowing that people, if they are taken to court, if the Crown prosecution deems it justified or a matter that should be brought before the judge, then to have a fine issued, knowing full well that it won't be paid and there'll be no consequences. And I think this is something that we should demand some written response from, I guess it's the Attorney General, about an explanation of why and how this should be able to happen. I mean, I think this is dreadful, a dreadful condemnation on our legal system. So if we get angry and we have a lot of empathy, as I'm sure we all do, for people whose businesses have been vandalized, people's homes are having items stolen from them, I think we should send a letter requiring an explanation from the Attorney General. And so I would like to move that we send a letter, CAO with the mayor, of course, send a letter basically demanding an explanation of how this situation could be allowed to develop in this community and what steps they're going to take to correct this system. That's my motion.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Earl. I'm just going to get that motion repeated back, just so we're clear what the motion is on the floor. Sorry, or do you want us to write that out?
The motion that I have is to send a letter demanding an explanation to the letters to be sent to the Attorney General and asking what steps can be taken
To correct this situation.
to correct the situation.
I guess, did you?
No, just really more for information. The reason this was on the consent calendar is we're CC'd on it. And we don't traditionally respond to CCs. This is a
Yes,
unique
right.
situation where a counselor has requested it lifted from the consent calendar. The questions are directly to the Attorney General as per the letter. So if we are to follow up a letter to the Attorney General asking to ensure we get a copy of his response to the questions contained in this would probably be most appropriate
That
at
would
this
meet the
point.
spirit of the motion. Yes.
Yeah, I think that I like that as well too. I'd like to think that most of the information in this is accurate, but, it might not be, right? So if we get that, yeah. And I've had, yeah, okay. So are we changing the motion?
I think.
That's what your
I
intent
think
was in the
what
motion?
Blair has said captures the intent
Okay,
of my indignation that is expressed in my motion.
okay, well, if that's the case, then I think we should change what Brenda had for the motion because from what those two things are two different meanings to myself. So,
Okay, so currently, that the email from William Wallace regarding the collection of outstanding criminal codes fines be received. Further, that council approve sending a letter to the Attorney General demanding an explanation as to why the current situation continues to occur and asking what steps can be made to correct the situation. And from what I understand, we're just going to be asking to be copied on the response that the Attorney General provides to Mr. Wallace?
I think that sounds right, because once we get that response, then we could then take further action if we decided to, right? Sorry, Blair.
Yeah, I was just going to say, really, where I was going was I was requesting to be copied on the answer, the city of Dawson Creek, that the Attorney General would be giving to Mr. Wallace. I guess it's a little less than we're
Well, that's
demanding.
fine. We can express our righteous indignation after the response is received.
Okay.
That's fine. I'm quite prepared, unless with the second is approved, to accept that as a replacement motion.
You're fine with that, Councillor Earl? Yeah. Okay, so we are going to change that motion then to be that we are going to request copied on the response. Yeah. Okay, so we're good? Okay, any discussion? No, I'm going to call this motion to vote. Oh, sorry, before I can call it? Good. Okay, I'm going to call the question to vote. Motion, the vote is closed. That's carried. Next, we have 14, 2022 strategic priority chart. 14.1, 2022 strategic priority chart. As discussed a bit in our orientation, the plan is for in the new year, once we have, hired a new CAO and have that direction, that we would then early in the new year, January or February, have all of us together and set some strategic planning. So that's kind of where that's at for that. So I don't need anything else there, do I? No. Okay. 15 media questions. There's no lineup of media. 16 committee of the whole report. I'll just need we've dealt with 16.1. I'll just need a motion to accept the rest of the committee of the whole reports. Councillor Earl, second Councillor Kempf. Do we need a motion for that? Okay. Old school motion now? Voting? Oh. All right, I'm going to call the vote, which is to accept, all the 16. Okay. One more vote. Has everybody voted? Councillor Parslow? The vote is closed. It's carried. Number 17, we're going to get a motion to recess to close. I go through 17.1. Do I need to accept? Do I need to read all those? Okay. Motion to move to closed resolution, meeting of council closed to public, agenda item 5.1, 5.2, and 6.1, section 90 minutes, as previously noted. Agenda item 3.1, verbal update from the Chief Administration Officer, reason the Dawson Creek Regional Airport contract as per section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. Also, agenda item 8.1, offer to city to purchase private property as per section 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. As well, agenda item 10.1, a verbal update from Mayor Dober, reason the Chief Administration Officer position as per section 91C, labor relations or the other employee relations. Motion, Councillor Earl, second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? I'll call a vote. Okay, vote is closed. It's carried, so we will take however long we need.